No Vacancy for Trouble, a second chapter in Mystery by Wynn Valentine. You are listening to Part 2, beginning with Chapter 13. Chapter 13. The county reconstruction team brought sandbags, clean canvas, 3 cameras, and no patience for narrative. Their lead technician began by photographing the test laundry cart on all 4 sides. She recorded its wheel diameter, frame width, empty weight, and the fact that its front left caster squeaked. The cart recovered from the service passage remained in evidence. This one had spent 20 years in e-storage and smelled of cedar blocks and mouse-proofing oil. "We are testing route, time, wheel behavior, and contact points," she said. "We are not reenacting a homicide. No participant represents the victim or suspect." Meg signed the observer protocol. Rena signed the property access log. Piers Nadeau signed a statement that his role concerned the landing surface and cart mechanics, then read every restriction before adding the time. Armand looked at Meg. "Your role? Identify doors, routes, and building behavior. Remain behind the marked line unless directed. And if you have an idea, state it. Do not test it." Good. The approval felt suspiciously like progress. Rain had stopped overnight. The service drive remained damp beneath the trees, while the exposed sand at the boathouse landing had dried to a pale crust. Cameras covered the passage entrance, switchback, and lower door. An officer waited at the service drive overlook where Celeste claimed she had seen Dorian's orange coat. Inside, the town inspector stood at the kitchen boundary. The plywood over the old elevator had not moved. Evidence tape marked the empty hose hooks, radiator, and shelves concealing the maintenance recess. The technician loaded the test cart with secured sandbags to 178 pounds, then added a folded moving blanket to prevent shifting. The weight matched Dorian's documented body weight, without requiring anyone to describe what the bags represented. "First run is loaded," she said. "Second is empty. Same operator, same route. We stop if the cart becomes unstable." A county officer took the handle. At the signal, he pushed from the linen room door, around the boarded lift, past the wall hose outline, and through the exterior door. The cart clipped the radiator corner. "Stop," the technician said. She photographed a faint gray rub on the clean canvas and the contact point on the radiator guard. The cart reset. On the second attempt, the officer angled the frame through the narrow place and reached the exterior door. It refused to open. He turned the latch again. "Lift the handle," Meg said from behind the line. The technician looked at Armand. He nodded for the instruction to stand. The officer raised the handle, pulled, and the swollen lower edge cleared the threshold. Cold air entered the passage. "Door knowledge affects elapsed time," the technician said. "Reset for separate runs. Operator informed, operator uninformed." Rena wrote it down. Marlowe had lifted the handle without thinking. A person unfamiliar with the door would lose time, make noise, or believe it locked. On the informed run, the cart cleared the passage in 1 minute 48 seconds. It reached the switchback at 3 minutes 12. The downhill wheel took the load as the grade turned. At the sandy landing, it sank and the cart slewed toward the lake. The operator stopped before it tipped. Piers crouched beside the wheel while the cameras recorded. Outer edge is carrying most of it. Sand rises under side pressure. The technician placed a scale against the tire. The damp band reached 3 7/8 inches above the bottom tread. The evidence photograph of the original cart showed a 4-inch crescent. "Similar mechanism," she said. "Not an individualizing comparison." Piers nodded. "Same kind of fight. Can't tell you who fought it." The loaded cart reached the boathouse service door in 5 minutes 51 seconds. The officer positioned it broadside to the entrance, where a person at the overlook could see the top third of its canvas bed, but not its wheels. The second officer radioed from above. "Visible. Operator partially screened by alder. Bright fabric above cart rim would be visible." The technician draped a strip of orange waterproof nylon over the upper sandbag. From Meg's position, it looked uncomfortably like Dorian's shell. The observer above said, "Orange visible. No detail. Cannot distinguish garment on load from garment on standing person at this angle." Celeste's sighting could be factually accurate and structurally false. The technician removed the orange strip and opened the boathouse's uphill door. A blue chalk mark remained on the inside latch plate, preserved beneath evidence film. County had already sampled it. For the reconstruction, she installed a clean plate of the same size over the original and dusted a test seam on the nylon with laboratory-marked blue chalk. "We are testing transfer geometry only," she said. The cart would not pass straight through. The officer had to rotate the handle downhill, lift the front edge, and pull the canvas rim close to the latch. The nylon brushed metal. A blue streak appeared on the clean plate at the same height as the photographed evidence mark. Rena exhaled. The chalk was on Dorian before it was on the latch. "Possible sequence," Armand said. Meg pictured Dorian crouched beside the west joists, orange shoulder near Marlowe's blue layout line. A chalk transfer to his shell. A second transfer as the loaded cart caught the boathouse door. "Did County find chalk on his coat?" she asked. "Trace blue particles on the right shoulder and sleeve," Armand said. "Same general formulation as samples from the west wing marks and the latch. Common contractor chalk. The lab cannot identify a single stick. Common materials, uncommon sequence." The towel came next. County used clean linen folded over the test cart's upper rail. Without it, the sandbag rubbed the canvas seam and radiator guard. With it, the load passed through the tight turn without direct contact against the frame. The fold placed the towel exactly where Dorian's coat fibers had been recovered. "Room 8 towel is padding," Meg said. "Consistent with padding," the technician corrected. Meg repeated. They reset for the empty run. The same operator returned the cart uphill from the boathouse door. Without weight, the wheels skimmed the sand. The cart reached the service passage in 4 minutes 2 seconds, including the switchback. Its front caster squeaked when pulled sideways past the radiator, matching the sound on Dorian's recording closely enough for the technician to order waveform comparison. "Loaded down, empty up," Rena said. "Less than 10 minutes total, if the person knew the route." Armand checked the timesheet. Plus time to position, stage, clean, and return hardware. The node window allows it. "Stone steps unnecessary," Meg said. Yes. For days, everyone had treated the 64 steps as a natural barrier. Who could carry a body down them? Who could descend without being seen from the lobby? The questions had been built around the wrong path. The service drive required no impossible strength. It required a cart, access, and knowledge. At the kitchen boundary, the technician reproduced the door and radiator sounds while a department phone recorded beside the old elevator. The double clunk occurred when an officer on the second floor opened the service shaft access panel under the inspector's supervision. The radiator knocked after Zone 1 reached pressure. The desk bell traveled clearly when the kitchen doors remained open. Each sound from Dorian's file belonged to this route. Dr. Menon joined by phone when the physical run ended. Armand put her on speaker, but summarized nothing the reconstruction had not established. "Based on the medical findings, audio location, trace transfers, and route test," she said, "the boathouse ladder is not a credible site of the fatal injury." The words carried more finality than any dramatic declaration. Armand faced Meg and Rena. The investigation now treats the linen service passage as the primary scene, and the boathouse as a staged secondary scene. Rena crossed out, "Who met Dorian at boathouse?" on her working board. Beneath it, she wrote, "Who controlled the service route?" The technician did not let the new question end the work. She documented everything the test had failed to establish. The cart route did not identify an operator. The wheel mark could be produced by other heavy loads. The towel reduced contact but was not required to move the cart. The chalk transfer showed a plausible sequence, not the only sequence. The audio sounds located Dorian near the passage, but could not prove every door remained open for the entire recording. "Write the limitations beside the conclusions," she told Patel. "Otherwise, someone reading only the summary will turn consistent into exclusive." Meg watched Rena copy the same limitations onto their property board. It was tempting to experience uncertainty as weakness in a case. Here, uncertainty marked the boundary around what the evidence could honestly carry. Armand asked for 2 additional timing runs, an operator unfamiliar with the lifting door, and an operator who entered from the kitchen rather than the linen room. The uninformed officer lost 43 seconds at the latch and made enough noise to be audible from the lobby. The kitchen start operator reached the exterior door quickly, but had to retrieve the cart from the linen room, crossing the area visible from the back stair. "Knowledge saves time and attention," Rena said. "And reduces witnesses," Meg added. The technician recorded both statements as observations requiring comparison with the known timeline. They also tested the overlook in full daylight. From Celeste's claimed position, the upper half of the boathouse door was visible through alder branches. The service drive switchback was not. A person could see orange fabric at the final landing without seeing the cart's descent or the empty return.
So her statement describes the only part she could see, Meg said, or the only part she chose to report.
On the return uphill, the team preserved casts of the fresh test impressions and compared them to photographs from the original scene. Rain and later traffic prevented a footprint conclusion. No boot impression could now place a particular person beside the cart, and no theory should pretend otherwise. The formal report would take days. The change in investigation happened now because several independent systems agreed. Medical findings, audio, fibers, wheel behavior, chalk height, and route time. No single clue carried the reversal. The structure did. The suspect field changed shape. Inez knew the shoreline and boathouse agreement, but her vehicle and phone placed her away from the inn. Bernadette knew backstairs and old family signals, but her documented lie ended hours before the death window. Celeste had entered the building and lied about the light, yet she had fumbled the linen door when shown it during the first site walk. Marlowe knew the cart route, the latch, the radiator, the controller, the hose hardware, and the fresh blue chalk on the joists. Knowledge was not guilt. It was no longer evenly distributed. Piers remained at the landing after the equipment went uphill. He examined the dock winch and tied a red ribbon across its handle. Still unsafe, he said when Meg approached under escort. The murder investigation did not repair it? Poorly designed service. The ordinary maintenance note steadied her. Send me a written estimate. Repair or replacement? Both. Separate options. He gave a slow, approving nod. Back in the lobby, Rena found a courier envelope pushed beneath the front door. Northmark's name appeared in gray at the top. The letter inside was addressed to the estate attorney and copied to Meg. Notice of withdrawal of acquisition proposal, the heading read. Northmark cited undisclosed structural conditions, compromised records, investigation delays, and reputational exposure. Its offer was withdrawn effective immediately, without the 5-day revival period Celeste had previously promised. She sat through the hearing last night, Rena said, then pulled this before the reconstruction ended. Armand read the letter without touching it. Her attorney notified us at 7:10 this morning that she intends to leave Vermont, after collecting personal property from her rental. Can you stop her? Meg asked. Not for wanting to travel. We have preservation demands and an interview agreement. County is assessing whether evidence supports more. Meg looked through the front window. The lake road curved beyond the bare maples, one route north and another south. The staged scene had collapsed. The buyer was already moving toward the exit. Chapter 14. Northmark had withdrawn its offer at 7:10 Tuesday morning. 4 minutes later, its automated document portal sent the estate a reminder to approve Dorian Pritchard's invoice. Rena found the message while reconciling the inn's vendor correspondence. She printed nothing. She placed her laptop on the front desk, photographed the screen with the time visible, and called Meg down from room 4. This may be the fastest administrative mistake in Vermont, she said. The email subject read, Payment Action Required, Juniper Ridge Review LLC. The body named Dorian as vendor and Ashworth House as the project location. Northmark's gray logo appeared at the bottom beneath a confidentiality notice long enough to discourage literacy. Meg did not touch the trackpad. Why did it come to Sylvia's estate account? The portal says Project Contact. Sylvia's address was entered as site owner. By whom? User identifier only. C. Rusk NW. The attachment preview showed an invoice number, a $3,000 retainer, and a line reading Independent Structural Risk Comparison, Confidential Client Report. Dorian's company name and professional license number matched the estate's own contract. The client did not. Juniper Ridge, Meg said, registered in Delaware. Vermont Foreign Company filing uses a Montpelier agent. Rena opened a second tab containing a public corporate record. The agent also represents Northmark Wellbeing Properties. That is connection, not ownership. Northmark's portal is stronger. Meg read the reminder again. Dorian had told her he needed to disclose a second client. Celeste had later described that client as an entity connected to Northmark, without admitting she had arranged it. Rena returned to the estate mailbox search and narrowed it to Dorian's license number. 4 older messages appeared beneath the reminder. One was the estate engagement Meg had already signed. Two were automated calendar invitations she had declined because Dorian and Celeste were not supposed to inspect together. The fourth had been sent to Sylvia 12 days before her death. Project Aster Parcel Coordination, the subject read. Celeste asked permission for a lender-side consultant to view shoreline access, west wing service routes, and the boathouse approach. Sylvia's reply consisted of 9 words. Name the lender, name the consultant, and stop entering sideways. Celeste had responded that the capital entity required confidentiality before formal offer acceptance. Sylvia had not replied again. She tried to bring the second client in while Sylvia was alive, Meg said, and Sylvia refused unnamed access. After she died, Celeste used Northmark's site review to enter anyway. Rena tagged the thread for preservation. The message proves attempted access, not what happened after. Meg resented how often correct distinctions required repetition. Do we open the attachment? Rena asked. It came to the estate account and names the estate property. That answers authority, not judgment. Meg called Armand. He arrived with Patel and a county digital evidence specialist. The specialist preserved the email header, portal URL, account permissions, and attachment without using Rena's browser session.
Only after making a forensic copy did she open the invoice on a department laptop. The final line contained a project code, NWP Aster 04.
Armand wrote the letters without expanding them. Could mean several things. Northmark Wellbeing Properties. Could mean one obvious thing. The portal log showed Celeste's user account created the vendor engagement 3 days before Dorian arrived. It also showed 2 reports expected, a client comparison memo and a conflict disclosure page for the property owner. The second item carried the status Upload Received, page 17. The file itself was unavailable. Page 17, Rena said. Dorian's preliminary report skips from 16 to 18. Meg looked toward the evidence cabinet. The copy recovered after his death had a clean tear at the binding between those pages. Armand said, We already documented the missing page. Celeste's notebook, Meg said. She used it when Dorian disclosed the conflict. What about it? At the hearing, the top page was new. If she wrote on a page laid over notes from Wednesday, the pressure might remain below. The digital specialist kept her eyes on the portal. Armand did not reward the idea with visible approval. The notebook is preserved by agreement, he said. County can examine it under the existing warrant scope if the state's attorney agrees. I am not asking to see it. You are leaning toward the door through which it left. Meg stepped back. By noon, Juniper Ridge's registered agent had produced incorporation records under subpoena. Northmark's acquisition subsidiary owned the company. Celeste was its authorized project officer. The portal reminder had been generated because she terminated Northmark's acquisition file before clearing Dorian's pending invoice. One automated system had contradicted another person's silence. The records revealed more than one parcel. Project Aster included the inn, 2 seasonal cottages, the closed bait shop south of the marina, and a strip of association-owned shoreline listed as access dependency. Each carried a numbered code. Ashworth House was Aster 04. Northmark had not been buying an old inn in isolation. It had been assembling a continuous lakefront site. Sylvia's mailbox contained earlier offers for 2 of the neighboring parcels. Celeste had copied Sylvia on one message by mistake, then recalled it. Rena recovered the text from the estate archive. Northmark described the bait shop as non-conforming visual inventory and the cottages as transitional lodging stock. Homes and livelihoods became obstructions once translated into acquisition language. One cottage owner had refused 3 offers. The fourth added a relocation allowance that expired the same week as Northmark's deadline to Meg. The bait shop estate had accepted contingent terms, but could cancel if Northmark failed to acquire service road access. Ashworth House is not Aster 04 because it was 4th, Meg said. It is the parcel that makes the others function. Rena traced the service drive on the map. It reached the shoreline behind the inn, crossed beside the boathouse, and ended near the association strip. Northmark could build around an old house. It could not easily replace a legal access route without public review. Meg called Leonard, the estate attorney, and asked whether the prior offers created disclosure obligations to neighboring owners. He said the estate could share its own correspondence, but not subpoenaed company material. Then we shared the letters Sylvia received, Meg said. For what purpose? So, people know Northmark treated the parcels as one project, while negotiating with each as if its deadline were private. That may affect their contracts and invite litigation. Would silence avoid litigation, or only choose who enters it, uninformed? Leonard paused. I will draft a factual notice and review it for privilege. It was not the immediate warning Meg wanted to send. It was the warning that might survive contact with law. The parcel strategy enlarged Celeste's stakes. Dorian's report could raise the inn's repairable value, trigger structural scrutiny, expose the second client, and delay the access parcel long enough for other owners to withdraw. A single honest report threatened the entire crescent, not one sale. Meg spread the public parcel map beside the corporate list. The 4 private properties formed an uneven crescent around the association strip. Without Ashworth House, the service road and boathouse access interrupted Northmark's planned frontage. Without the association strip, the assembled properties lacked the shoreline path shown in Celeste's early concept packet. Inez's grant problem affected that strip, Rena said, which means exposure could freeze an easement Northmark expected to use. Celeste had reasons to know about the grant dispute, and Dorian inspected both the shoreline and the building. The possible motives overlapped: suppressed structural value, hidden acquisition structure, compromised association funds, and a consultant obligated to disclose conflicts to both sides. Armand would call overlap complexity. Meg called it a reason someone might believe one dead engineer solved several problems at once. Armand returned at 1 with a photocopy he was permitted to show Meg. It displayed the lower half of a blank notebook page photographed under angled light. No writing appeared in ink. Indented strokes emerged as shatters. P17, conflict owner copy. Beneath it, a second line. Remove before M comes back. The initial could mean Meg, it could mean Marlowe, it could mean any person Celeste abbreviated rather than named. County photographed the page beneath the sheet she used Wednesday, Armand said. The indentations are consistent with writing pressure from the removed upper page. Analysis is preliminary. The page number matches the portal. Yes, she removed Dorian's conflict disclosure. The evidence supports that theory. What other theory survives? One in which she wrote about removing a different owner copy, or someone else used the notebook, or the sequence is not what we think. Fewer with each record. Not 0. Meg disliked qualifications most when they were correct. Celeste arrived at 2:30 with an attorney and 2 empty archive boxes. She had agreed to collect personal Northmark material left in the inn's temporary deal room. Rena inventoried the room before anyone entered. The boxes stayed open, and every item crossed the desk under camera. Celeste wore the camel raincoat again. Without the cobalt notebook, one hand repeatedly closed around nothing. Her attorney said, Ms. Rusk will not answer questions about Mr. Pritchard's death. She will clarify property records relevant to collection. Armand stood beside the parlor door. Understood. Meg held up the portal invoice inside its evidence sleeve. Is Juniper Ridge Review your property record? It is a Northmark special purpose entity, Celeste said. You hired Dorian through it. Northmark commissioned an independent comparison while he worked for the estate. That is why the engagement required conflict disclosure. The disclosure page disappeared. The attorney said, That is outside document collection. Celeste kept her eyes on Meg. Dorian accepted both engagements. He believed his professional boundaries were sufficient. Did you? I believed his second report would show whether the estate report was commercially exaggerated. Commercially exaggerated in which direction? Either. Northmark needed to know whether the building was a viable conversion or a liability being presented as heritage. Meg remembered Dorian telling Celeste he would not discuss one client's work with another. You paid him to tell you what he planned to tell me. I paid for an independent report. On the same joists. A beam does not become private because 2 clients have interests in it. His conclusions do. Celeste's professional warmth thinned. You were preparing to accept an as-is offer while withholding a consultant's material concerns. Northmark protected itself. By hiding behind a company I had never heard of. By preventing an emotionally compromised heir from controlling the only technical narrative. The phrase struck more accurately than Meg wanted. She had arrived planning to sell. She had also resented every fact that made selling harder, than every fact that made it easier for someone else. Due diligence does not require removing a disclosure page, she said. Celeste's gaze flicked toward Armand. I did not remove Dorian's page. Your notebook says remove before M comes back. The attorney stood. This collection is concluded. Celeste did not move. You do not have my notebook. The police do. It was the first time surprise escaped her completely. Armand said, Ms. Rusk, your counsel agreed to preservation and examination. We will address questions through counsel. The attorney closed the empty archive box. We are leaving. At the front door, Celeste turned back. I hired Dorian, she said. That is not murder. It is what a buyer does when a seller cannot decide whether she wants truth or leverage. Did you see his body in the cart? Meg asked. I saw orange fabric. And wrote a time in the breaker log so it could be a living man at a lit boathouse. You are arranging unrelated facts into the answer you need. The warning sounded like something Armand might have said. That did not make Celeste innocent. After she left, Rena placed the unused box back in the deal room. She admitted the second hiring, because the portal proved it. She denied the page, because the indentation is not the page. Meg wrote the sequence on the renovation board. Shell client, conflict page, page removed, false light claim, altered log. Withdrawn offer, departure plan. Celeste had reason to control both versions of Dorian's report. She had access after his death. She had built a paper timeline in which he remained alive at the boathouse. The property conspiracy reached around every fact. She killed him, Meg said. Rena did not agree immediately. She concealed something. The second report exposed the acquisition strategy. The estate report exposed sabotage. If he disclosed both, Northmark lost the inn and she lost her career. And Marlowe helped her with the building, maybe with the body. Rena took the marker from Meg and drew 2 columns beneath their names. Celeste knows acquisition structure, report pages, paper logs, and Dorian's second engagement. Marlowe knows joists, hardware, controller access, cart route, and doors. Together they know everything. That is not the same as both doing everything. Celeste had the reason, Marlowe had the route. Then which one struck him? Meg pointed to Celeste's column. The person who could lose the larger thing. People do not take turns according to motive size. She was at the inn after the death. She removed a page. She changed the power time. She claimed the orange fabric was Dorian. All after 6:40, by her own timeline. Dorian's recording starts at 5:42. Her timeline is already false. Parts of it are. Rena capped the marker. I am not saying she didn't kill him. I am saying a conspiracy is a relationship, not a single body with 4 hands. The objection irritated Meg because it did not weaken the theory enough to dismiss it. Celeste could have arrived earlier, confronted Dorian, and called Marlowe to move him. Or Marlowe could have been present while she struck Dorian. The exact division did not change who had designed the pressure around the inn. We start with Celeste, Meg said. Armand starts with evidence. And we start by organizing it. Rena allowed that wording to remain. The theory closed around the case with a satisfying click. Meg distrusted satisfaction in principle, and wanted it anyway. Armand returned from speaking with Celeste's attorney outside. He carried 2 pages from Dorian's recoverable draft, released to Meg because they described an immediate structural hazard on estate property. Before you decide you have the whole answer, he said, read the last paragraph. Dorian's language was dry and exact. The lower cuts expose pale wood without oxidation or seasonal grime. Their positions intersect blocking installed during the Fitch stabilization scope 18 months ago. The cuts therefore postdate that work. They are not historic deterioration and cannot have existed in the condition represented by the contractor's own completion photographs. Meg read it twice. The joists had not merely failed after Marlowe repaired them. Someone had cut through his own work. Chapter 15. Fresh wood did not look fresh for long. That was the first thing the county structural engineer told them Wednesday morning before she entered the West Wing in white coveralls and a respirator. Light, moisture, dust, and handling all began changing an exposed surface at once. Her job was not to call a cut new. It was to describe how new the evidence allowed it to be. Meg watched from the approved boundary at the top of the east stair. A temporary polycarbonate panel sealed the corridor beyond, installed so investigators could observe the joists without carrying dust and evidence through the occupied side. Through it, work lights turned the damaged west rooms a hard white. The engineer moved beneath the floor framing with a ruler and oblique lamp. A county photographer documented every surface before samples were taken. Dorian's blue chalk lines remained visible beside Marlowe's older stabilization blocks. Rena stood beside Meg with the original work order. 18 months ago, Marlowe billed 42 hours for sistering these joists. No completion photographs in the estate file. His insurer produced 6 yesterday. On Rena's tablet, the old photographs showed pale replacement boards bolted to dark original timber. No notches crossed the lower shoulders. The new cuts visible through the panel passed into both old joists and Marlowe's added supports. The engineer emerged after 90 minutes and removed her respirator inside the containment vestibule. 3 categories, she said. Historic checking, older structural cuts, and recent tool damage. Do not combine them. Meg almost smiled at the instruction. Define recent. After the stabilization blocks were installed, likely within weeks to several months, subject to lab analysis. The exposed wood lacks the oxidation, embedded grime, and moisture pattern present on known 18-month surfaces. Could the cuts be from repairs? They remove load-bearing section at the point of greatest bending stress. No competent repair specification calls for that. Accidental? 1 cut perhaps. These repeat across 4 joists at similar depths. The saw entered from accessible positions. Whoever made them adjusted angle to avoid pipes. Rena pointed to the blue marks. Layout chalk? Yes. Lines were snapped before cutting. The formulation is common. It marks intent to place the cuts, not the identity of the person holding the saw. What tool? Meg asked. Oscillating saw started the corners. Compact reciprocating blade completed the deeper sections. Tool class findings. Not unique tool matches unless we recover blades with corresponding damage. The engineer spoke as if every limitation strengthened the statement that survived it. She opened a second drawing and marked each damaged member in red. 2 cuts lay beneath room 9. The 4th sat near a plumbing chase, where leaking water had darkened the surrounding wood and made intentional damage easier to blame on rot. Immediate risk? Meg asked. The temporary shoring is carrying load. It needs daily visual checks and a licensed review after any heavy rain or power loss affecting the pumps. No entry above without my written release. Repair? Sistering may still work on 2. The hall bearing needs a designed steel plate or full member replacement. The chase requires opening from below after hazardous material clearance. I do evidence and structural scope. A contractor prices it. A contractor caused some of it. Then obtain 3 bids and disclose the evidence hold. Do not let justified anger choose engineering. Rena added the instruction to the repair board. Does this affect the proposed 6-room separation? Not directly. Rooms 1 through 6 sit east of the fire barrier, but the shoring inspection becomes a condition of any limited occupancy because guests cannot be housed beside a structure no one is monitoring. Every answer created work. Meg preferred that to answers that created surrender. The engineer showed them cross-sections from 2 samples. Known old cuts carried gray oxidation into the grain, and black dust pressed along the lower edge. The recent kerfs remained pale below the surface, with sharp fibers folded in one direction by the final blade stroke. The saw moved from corridor side toward the exterior, she said. That means the operator stood within the closed wing. They were not reaching through an access opening from below. Could one visit produce all 4? Comfortably, if the person knew where to cut. Less comfortably if they were exploring. The blue layout lines supplied that knowledge. Whoever held the saw had planned the load loss before entering. Armand arrived with Marlowe and Marlowe's attorney at 11. The attorney had requested an opportunity to identify legitimate work visible in the photographs. The county allowed it from the same observation boundary, with no tools and no entry. Marlowe took one look through the panel and said, "Pritchard did that." His attorney touched his sleeve too late. Armand said, "Why?" "To turn a maintenance report into a crisis. He billed by inspection phase." The engineer folded her arms. "You are saying a licensed engineer cut 4 structural members to increase his fee. I'm saying he wanted a result. With which tools? He had a case in his car." Meg remembered the case. Camera, moisture meter, inspection awl, laser level, hand tools. No reciprocating saw. "His vehicle inventory is documented," Armand said. "No powered cutting tool was recovered. Then he borrowed one. This place is full of tools. Where? Meg asked. The attorney said, Ms. Ashworth is not conducting this interview. Marlowe answered anyway. Basement shop. Sylvia never locked it. Rena opened the inventory. The basement tools were photographed at 8:20 Wednesday morning. Reciprocating saw present. Dust undisturbed on the case. It remained sealed after the death. He could have brought a tool earlier. Dorian first entered Ashworth House Wednesday at 8:58, Meg said. I opened the door for him. Marlowe's expression hardened. You think because a man carried a clipboard he couldn't carry a saw another day? The entry system and exterior camera records show no prior visit. Camera misses the service drive. The answer arrived too quickly. Marlowe knew exactly which route escaped the camera because he had worked it. That knowledge was not yet exclusive. The engineer placed Dorian's first inspection photograph beside the county image. Its embedded time read 3:05 Wednesday afternoon. The pale kerf already existed. A ruler visible in his frame showed the cut depth before he took any sample. Mr. Pritchard documented conditions before the period when witnesses place him alone, she said. The image was uploaded automatically to his business server at 3:07. County verified the file history. Marlowe leaned closer to the panel. Photographs can be changed. This one was preserved on a server you did not control. He could have cut it before 3. Then he brought 2 powered tools into a building where 3 people saw his equipment, crossed an alarm seal without disturbing it, cut 4 members in a respirator zone, removed the tools, cleaned himself, and photographed the result while remaining visible elsewhere for much of the morning. The engineer did not raise her voice. That is a theory. It is not one supported by the current access logs, dust patterns, or file times. Marlowe looked at Meg rather than the evidence. You hired a county expert after deciding what you wanted found. The police hired her, Meg said. I would prefer not to find that someone cut my building. You prefer a reason not to sell. It was close enough to an old truth that Meg examined it. A week ago she had wanted the sale. Now losing the offer frightened her less than accepting a conclusion someone had manufactured with a saw. I prefer choices that were not built by destroying the alternatives, she said. The county engineer displayed the insurer's completion photograph beside the current image. This stabilization block parries your company's stamp. The damaging cut crosses it. Either the cut occurred after your documented work, or you submitted a false completion photograph. Marlowe stared at the paired images. Old wood shifts, he said. It does not move a saw kerf across a stamped board. You people want this to be sabotage because sabotage turns a bad building into a crime scene. The joists were failing before I touched them. Some were, the engineer said. These were also cut. Same outcome, different cause. Anger rose with unusual clarity. Marlowe had built his defense from the inn's genuine weakness. The west wing had been neglected. Sylvia had deferred work. Water had damaged old timber. Because some failure was natural, he expected every additional wound to disappear inside it. The property had not merely become dangerous. Someone had made it more dangerous, then called the result inevitable. Marlowe and his attorney left before noon. At the front door, he told Meg the containment would trap moisture and worsen the framing. She asked him to submit the concern in writing. He did not answer. Drew arrived after lunch to replace a permitted shut-off valve with Cass. The work was in the basement, far from the west wing, but the paired photographs remained on the lobby board beneath evidence covers. They stopped when they saw them. That's Marlowe's stamp, Drew said. The cut crosses his block. Drew set down the tool bag. He went in there alone. Meg waited. 3 weeks before Sylvia died, we were supposed to inspect moisture at the west exterior wall. He told me to stay at the truck and call suppliers for dehumidifier prices. Was that unusual? Armand asked from the dining room doorway. Drew startled. You were here? I am now. Cass came up the basement stairs behind them. Tell him the whole thing. Drew looked at the photograph again. Marlowe said the floor wasn't safe for 2 people. He took a compact saw case because he said a warped access panel might need trimming. Describe the case, Armand said. Black, hard plastic, red latches, Fitch restoration label over the handle. How long was he inside? 40 minutes, maybe 50. He came back dusty and angry. Said the building was done pretending. Meg heard the phrase in Marlowe's voice, opinion converted to condition. Did you see the saw afterward? At the shop, he cleaned the blade with solvent because old pine pitch gums teeth. Drew rubbed one thumb against the other. I didn't ask what he cut. Did he submit a work record? Not that I saw, Cass said. Private visit, powered tool, no second worker, no authorization. You knew enough to ask. I knew enough to think he was cutting an access panel. That is not what I said. Drew's face tightened. I was 19 when he hired me. He taught me half of what I know. Then keep the half that is true, Cass said. Armand took Drew's formal statement in the parlor. Meg and Rena went to the basement with Cass, who replaced the shutoff in 23 minutes and spent another 12 documenting it. People complain paperwork slows a job, Cass said while she photographed a valve tag. Bad paperwork slows the next 6 jobs. Good paperwork only slows this one. At 4, Armand received an encrypted file from Northmark's attorney. The company had begun producing Juniper Ridge expenses and project communications under subpoena. He did not show Meg the full records. He read one line because it concerned payment for work on her property. 8 weeks ago, he said, Juniper Ridge paid Fitch Restoration $12,500. For what? Armand turned the screen so the approved line was visible. Aster 04 Market Readiness, Structural Condition Acceleration. Rena read it once. Acceleration. The word made sabotage sound like a scheduling service. The expense packet also contained approval initials, CR. A note beneath the payment read, Condition must align with Phase 1 valuation before committee review. Northmark's first reduced offer had followed 9 days later. Celeste approved it, Meg said. Her user credentials did, Armand replied. Her attorney says project staff shared administrative access. We are obtaining login and network records. She hired Dorian to compare the condition after paying Marlowe to worsen it. That is the emerging sequence. And when Dorian found fresh cuts, she lost control of both reports. Armand closed the file. Do not turn emerging into complete. Meg walked to the West Wing barrier. Beyond the clear panel, the temporary posts stood in 2 rows beneath timber that had carried guests, furniture, winter snow, and Sylvia's refusal to close long after closing would have been sensible. Genuine neglect remained. The sabotage did not absolve Sylvia or restore the missing maintenance years. The way a dishonest argument exploited one true fact and forced it to carry a false conclusion. Meg had arrived believing the inn's condition would tell her what to do. Sell if the damage was large. Keep it only if repair was reasonable. She had treated the building as a verdict waiting to be read. Now even the condition had been manipulated. I want a preservation order covering every photograph, tool record, invoice, and communication about work in this wing, she said. The criminal orders are in process, Armand replied. Then the estate will issue civil holds too. No one gets to call these cuts age while the evidence disappears into ordinary business files. Rena added counsel, preservation notices to the next morning's list. Anger had not repaired a single joist. It had, however, ended Meg's willingness to let the people who damaged the inn price its future. The county engineer returned before leaving and handed Meg a 1-page owner notice. It separated original deterioration from intentional damage. Roof leakage, deferred drainage, and aged timber remained the estate's responsibility. 4 recent cuts and disturbed blocking did not. Do not let the criminal finding erase the maintenance finding, she said. I was hoping for one useful absolution. Buildings do not provide those. Meg signed acknowledgement. The distinction protected the case and denied her the easier story in which sabotage explained every expensive thing.
Sylvia had still postponed repairs. Meg had still arrived ready to sell, without understanding the systems.
Marlowe had exploited those failures, not invented them. Rena filed the notice under both evidence and repair scope, with a cross-reference rather than a duplicate. Same fact, different consequence. The phrase described most of the week. Meg looked toward the sealed West Wing. Northmark had not simply waited for Ashworth House to become cheap enough. Chapter 16. Rena waited until breakfast to return Meg's kindness unopened. They sat at the kitchen work table with coffee, oatmeal, and the week's final emergency hours sheet between them. Northmark's withdrawal had ended the condition attached to Rena's temporary extension. At 5 that evening, she would have neither an active contract nor a room she was entitled to occupy. The night before, Meg had said, "Stay as long as you need. If I reopen, there will be work." At breakfast, Rena wrote the sentence on a yellow pad and pushed it across the table. "Which part is the offer?" she asked. Meg put down her spoon. "All of it. Term, as long as you need." That is not a term. 6 months then. Pay? We discussed pay. We discussed that there should be some. I am not asking you to work for free. Rena tapped the first sentence. You offered free housing and possible future work in the same breath. That makes the housing feel generous and the work feel owed. The defensive answer assembled at once. Rena's Burlington lease ended next week. The inn had empty rooms. The murder inquiry had made commuting difficult. Room 4 was safe, pending the lock change. Each fact was true. Together they formed the same arrangement Sylvia had used with Bernadette. Care now, terms later, gratitude where a number should be. I should not have said it that way, Meg said. You already knew not to. Knowing is not the permanent correction people advertise. No. Contracts help. Rena turned the pad over. On the back she had listed 5 headings. Role, authority, compensation, housing, exit. I am willing to negotiate, she said. I am not willing to become indispensable before we decide what I am. Operations lead. For 6 rooms that are not open. Renovation operations lead until occupancy. Guest operations afterward. That is 2 scopes. Then 2 scopes. They moved to the lobby desk because contracts felt less personal there. Meg opened the draft she had begun after their first argument. Its language had improved, and its assumptions had not. She had written that Rena would support all necessary reopening activities, a phrase capable of swallowing every waking hour. Rena highlighted it. This is assist as needed, wearing a blazer. Meg deleted the line. They divided the first 8 weeks into renovation operations. Access logs, vendor scheduling, inventory controls, room readiness records, and authority to stop work that violated a permit, safety plan, evidence restriction, or written scope. Rena would not select structural methods, approve invoices above an agreed threshold, supervise police activity, or provide unpaid on-call coverage. The guest operations scope would activate only after limited occupancy approval. Reservations, guest communication, housekeeping sequence, safety briefings, vendor performance. And authority to remove a room from service without asking Meg first. Can I remove all 6? Rena asked. If the condition affects all 6. Can you override me? In writing, with the basis documented. Safety overrides need a qualified professional. Agreed. Rena added a conflict rule. No contractor who prepared the condition report could bid alone on the repair. No vendor could approve its own change order. Emergency work above $500 required a second written confirmation, unless delay threatened life or active property damage. What if a pipe is flooding at 2 a.m, Meg asked. I can authorize shutoff and containment. Permanent repair waits for scope unless waiting creates more damage. What if the only available plumber is related to the person approving the invoice? Disclose it. Price check afterward. Emergency does not mean pretend the conflict disappeared. What if the owner disagrees? The owner documents the override and accepts responsibility. Meg wrote it into the agreement. You have designed a system in which I cannot be quietly wrong. Quietly wrong is how hotels get bed bugs, wage claims, and uninspected boilers. In that order? Depends on the review site. They established a weekly decision meeting and a shared record of unresolved risks. Rena wanted access to operating accounts but not authority to sign checks, until the estate created a separate business entity. Meg agreed to read-only access and invoice approval tracking. Neither would use personal cards for in-purchases without a reimbursement record entered the same day. It was not trust in the sentimental sense. It was a structure within which trust could survive a bad week. They compared regional lodging salaries on 3 job postings and added a premium for combined renovation work. Housing in room 4 was a separate license, not deducted from wages, contingent on inspection and ending 30 days after employment. Utilities were included. Guests did not displace staff housing during high-rate weekends. Overtime, Rena said, time and a half after 40. On call, rotating when there is someone to rotate with. Until then, scheduled stipend plus call-out hours. There is no one else. Then no overnight guests until there is a second trained emergency contact. That condition could delay opening. Meg wrote it anyway. Exit, Rena said. Either party, 14 days during the first 60, 30 after. Immediate for safety, theft, harassment, or material breach. And if you sell. Meg stopped typing. Northmark's offer was gone. Another buyer could appear. Keeping me in had become emotionally possible without becoming financially decided. 6-week severance if ownership terminates the role within the 6-month term, she said. Housing continues for 30 days unless there is a safety closure. Rena studied her. That costs money. Yes, you could say the estate cannot promise. The estate can promise or refrain from hiring. Those are the choices. The answer altered something between them. Not affection. Reliability. Joel Mercer arrived at 11, carrying a corkboard, a label maker, and 2 paper bags from the school cafeteria. Armand had asked him to review the inn's emergency contact plan, independently of the police case. I was promised an organization that believes one person can answer every problem. Schools cure that belief by giving everyone 3 phone trees and none of them the same names. He set up the board beside the staff entrance, visible from the kitchen, but not to guests. Columns listed fire, medical, utilities, weather, security, building. Each required a primary contact, backup, authority limits, and the location of shutoffs or emergency supplies. Meg wrote Armand under security. Joel removed the card. 911 is primary. Armand is not your private alarm company. He is the police chief, which makes him especially unavailable when the town has an emergency. Rena hid a smile behind the label maker. They listed the department dispatch number. Then Armand only where a case-specific preservation order required notice. Cass and the utility emergency line went under plumbing. The town inspector appeared under building safety with the words business hours, emergency dispatch, after hours. Piers went under dock and lake access, but only after Joel called and obtained his consent. People are not resources because their number is in your phone, Joel said. Meg looked at Rena. This morning appears to have a theme. Repeated training improves retention. Joel added evacuation roles. Meg wanted to check every floor. Rena pointed out that a proprietor searching alone became a second emergency. The plan assigned zones only when 2 trained staff members were present and prohibited re-entry after alarm. What if someone is missing? Meg asked. You tell responders the last known location, Joel said. You do not become a responder because the person slept under your roof. The sentence reached Conrad's last winter, when Meg had believed love meant personally performing every task she could learn, including several she should never have attempted. She had called it devotion because helplessness felt worse. Write it in large letters, she said. Rena printed, account for people, do not re-enter. Joel tested the plan before allowing them to admire it. He placed 6 room number cards in a bowl, assigned Rena to the lobby and Meg to the kitchen exit, then announced imaginary smoke outside room 3. Meg immediately reached for the master keyring. Why? Joel asked. To check the room. The alarm is active. You are down the floor. Do you know whether room 3 is occupied? There are no guests. Today, build the habit for opening day. Rena pulled up the test occupancy sheet. Room 3 held 2 fictional guests. Room 5 held 1. Room 2 was marked owner use. She accounted for 4 people at the exterior meeting point. Meg accounted for kitchen staff, but had no way to know whether a fictional day visitor remained in the parlor. Visitor log, Meg said, and contractor log, Rena added. 1 combined presence board, not 3 lists in 3 rooms. They created magnetic tags for guests, staff, vendors, and day visitors. The board recorded presence, not private details, and had a grab sheet clipped beneath it for responders. On the second drill, Joel declared the east exit blocked. Rena redirected everyone to the front porch, but Meg tried to cross the lobby to retrieve the property binder. Leave it, Joel said. It has room assignments and emergency contacts, which is why the grab sheet lives beside the exit, not in the binder you love. Meg put the binder down. Again, Joel said. By the 4th drill, they cleared the imaginary building, carried the presence sheet, named the missing person and last known location, and remained outside. Joel marked the plan provisional. Repeat with all staff before occupancy. You have no all staff, he said. The contract addresses that, Rena replied. Then the contract has already improved the fire plan. They ate tomato soup and grilled cheese sandwiches beneath the unfinished board. Joel asked about the 6-room plan, not the murder. He suggested a 2nd-floor emergency supply cabinet and a guest card explaining lake weather alerts, without using the phrase sudden death, which the state's tourism office had somehow approved in an old brochure. At 2, Armand came through the staff door. Joel looked at the time. You were invited for lunch. It is 2. This is how public servants lose domestic privileges. Armand took the remaining half sandwich and kissed Joel briefly beside the pantry.
The gesture was ordinary enough that Meg looked away only to give privacy, not because it required interpretation. Inez voyeur update, Armand said after Joel left for school rehearsal. County and the state grant office completed the first financial tracing. Rena opened the suspect board. $28,000 was diverted to Stell's foundation work, he continued. Invoices were misclassified. Inez authorized the transfers and concealed them from the board. The matter is being referred for grant fraud and fiduciary review. But not murder, Meg said. Her truck, phone, home camera, fuel purchase, neighbors, and boot comparison exclude her from the service route during the relevant period. No communication with Marlowe or Celeste connects her to the body movement. She had motive to stop Dorian. She did. Evidence says she did not stop him by killing him. Rena moved Inez's card from the central suspect row to separate wrongdoing. Meg studied the new placement. Do we tell her she is cleared? We tell her the homicide investigation no longer considers her timeline viable, Armand said. Cleared sounds like approval of everything else. And if the town hears only that she stole grant money, that is not ours to correct with homicide details. The state will describe its action. Inez has counsel. Rena wrote not murderer / still accountable beneath the card. That looks like a moral label, Meg said. It is a filing aid. Inez would respect that defense. Armand almost smiled. She has requested that the diverted amount be described as temporarily reallocated pending restitution. How temporary? The 9th month remains in progress. Will the shoreline work freeze? Meg asked. The state placed the remaining funds under outside administration. Emergency stabilization can continue after a new vote. Inez would face consequences. Stell's foundation would not be allowed to collapse merely because the money reaching it had been misused. Justice did not require every practical outcome to become punishment. Meg looked at Celeste and Marlowe's columns. 2 people remained connected to the property's deliberate damage. Bernadette remained a liar with an old key and a real wage claim. The field narrowed without becoming simple. At 4:30, Meg and Rena signed the 6-month offer. Rena wrote received for review, not accepted, beside her name. You negotiated it for 3 hours, Meg said. Now I read it when neither of us is hungry. Unreasonably professional. The housing is influencing me. What happens after review? Meg asked. I send questions by noon tomorrow. You answer in writing. If we agree, I sign. If we do not, the temporary contract ends and I leave room 4 by the housing deadline. Meg disliked the image of Rena leaving enough to understand why the exit clause mattered. A role was not fair because she wanted the person to stay. It was fair if the person could leave without losing wages, shelter, or dignity. No persuasion during review? You may provide information. Inspirational speeches cost extra. Meg added a note to the file. Offer remains open 48 hours. No work beyond temporary scope until acceptance. Rena initialed it. The boundary did not weaken the possibility of partnership. It made partnership something both of them could choose. They filed the offer and completed the emergency board. Meg's name appeared beside no task that depended solely on her. The absence carried both demotion and relief. At 9:16 that evening, the West Wing seal alarm sent a shrill electronic pulse through the lobby. Meg was in room 2, wearing Conrad's green jacket over her pajamas, because the radiator had failed again. Rena opened her door across the hall at the same moment. Below them, a second alarm sounded, the service record cabinet. Meg reached the landing and stopped. The emergency board was visible through the stairwell. Account for people. Do not re-enter. Rena held up her phone, calling 911. A faint scrape came from behind the sealed West Wing door. Meg did not move toward it. Chapter 17. Meg waited outside in pajamas, Conrad's jacket, and one soft-soled clog. The other clog remained on the second-floor landing, where she had turned too quickly at the alarm. Leaving it was ridiculous. Going back for it would have been worse. Rena stood beside her beneath the front porch light, phone connected to dispatch. She had brought the presence sheet and both room keys because the emergency plan listed those items beside the exit. The alarm pulsed through the closed front door. West Wing seal, pause, records cabinet, pause. 2 occupants accounted for, Rena told the dispatcher. No guests, no contractors authorized, no one else known inside. From the lakeside of the house came a hard wooden crack. Meg took one step toward the porch rail,
and stopped. Sound from rear or west exterior, Rena said into the phone. We are not investigating. The sentence was for Meg as much as dispatch. Armand's cruiser reached the circular drive in 4 minutes. Patel arrived behind him, followed by 2 county officers in an unmarked vehicle. No one entered through the front. Armand took the presence sheet, asked Meg for the alarm sequence, and sent officers around both sides of the building. Any vehicle? He asked. None in front, Meg said. We did not cross the porch to look at the service turnout. Good. Praise for inaction was surprisingly difficult to receive. An officer radioed that the west porch door stood open beneath a broken board. Another found wet footprints on the service drive, but no vehicle. Armand entered through the kitchen with Patel, while the county officers cleared the west exterior. Meg and Rena waited in the police cruiser with its heater running. Rena looked down at Meg's bare foot. Operational note, she said. Exit shoes beside the bed. I have discovered one weakness in our emergency plan. 2. Your jacket has no reflective strip. Meg pulled Conrad's cuff over her hand. The visible repair Rena had made after it tore formed a dark green line against the older canvas. We will address my nighttime uniform at the next staff meeting. Once I accept the job. You carried the presence sheet. Professional reflex, not acceptance. The exchange kept the dark windows from becoming the only thing in the car. At 10:02, Armand came out. Building clear. Intruder is gone. What did they take? Meg asked. We do not know yet. The west porch board was pried away. The interior seal broke when the door opened from inside. The service record cabinet is open, and the manual bag is on the floor. They crossed from the west wing to the lobby, possibly through the old linen route. We are checking. You remain outside until the common areas are released. He held up his phone with the preliminary alarm history. The west porch sensor had not activated because the boarded exterior door sat beyond the wired threshold. The first signal came from the seal across the inner west wing door. The cabinet alarm followed 38 seconds later. The service exterior door registered opened 11 seconds after that. Entry west porch, exit service drive, Meg said. Likely sequence. Not established until we compare marks and cameras. They knew the route, or followed the only open corridor available once inside. The passage bends twice and looks blocked at the lift, which makes knowledge more likely. Armand put the phone away. Wet transfer prints run from the west hall to the interior door. Shoe covers may have been used in the lobby. We have one partial muddy impression outside the service door. Size? Not useful yet. Rectangular heel, diagonal 4-foot blocks. Common work boot. Marlowe wore work boots. So did Piers, Cass, Drew, half the Lake Association, and Meg, when she remembered both feet. Anything taken from the west wing? Rena asked. Nothing obvious. Dorian's documented cut locations were disturbed only by someone stepping around them. The person appears to have moved toward the records cabinet with purpose. Purpose made the intrusion more frightening than theft. A stranger looking for silver might open drawers. Someone who crossed an unsafe wing to reach one manual already knew what the building contained. Rena looked at the time. The alarm company logged the west seal first, cabinet second. 38 seconds apart. Send the log to Patel. At 10:12, headlights swept across the drive. Marlowe's truck stopped beside the county vehicle. He got out carrying a cordless drill and a rectangle of plywood under one arm. Armand met him before he reached the porch. Mr. Fitch, why are you here? Scanner said a door was open at Ashworth House. The scanner reported police response, not a repair request. Marlowe shifted the plywood. West porch was boarded with half-inch scrap. Wind gets under it once the nails move. I brought 3/4 exterior grade. How did you know which door? Meg asked from the cruiser window. His eyes found her bare foot, then the open porch, then Armand. That's where people get in. Police did not release that location over dispatch. Everyone knows the west porch is weak. You said it was nailed shut. Nails are not locks. Patel measured the plywood without touching it. 31 by 47. Meg looked toward the dark west side of the house. That is the opening size. Marlowe shifted his grip. It's standard scrap. Standard to which opening? Armand asked. I boarded it before. I remembered dimensions. You remembered them after hearing only that police responded to Ashworth House. I brought what I had. The plywood edges were freshly cut. Fine sawdust clung to the truck bed where it had lain. Armand said, "When did you cut it?" "Tonight, at my shop. Before or after the dispatch call?" "After. We will request the shop camera footage." Marlowe's face did not change, but one hand tightened around the drill handle. "Request whatever lets you bore the hole before rain gets in." Armand stepped between the truck and the house. "Put the drill and board in the bed of your vehicle. An officer will take your information. You are not repairing anything tonight. Leaving it open makes the building less secure. We are preserving an entry point." Marlowe looked past him at the inn. His frustration belonged less to a contractor denied useful work than to a person denied access to a mistake. He set the board down too hard. "You will call me tomorrow when your evidence team finishes turning a broken door into a philosophy." "The estate will obtain bids," Meg said, "from people who don't know the framing. Knowledge of the framing is now part of the concern." Marlowe's mouth tightened. An officer guided him toward the truck to take a statement. At 11, the lobby was released for limited escorted access. The West Wing, service passage, and archive room remained under police control. Meg put on her missing clog and stood behind a new tape line while Patel photographed the records cabinet. The outer door showed no pry marks. Its alarm wire had been pulled loose from inside. The cabinet lock was intact. "Opened with a key," Rena said. Patel glanced at her. "No damage to lock or strike," Rena clarified. "Observation only." The service elevator manual lay on the floor inside its clear bag. The evidence access seal had been cut in a straight line. Its linen route foldout had opened and then been folded incorrectly, leaving one corner protruding. Dust on the lobby floor formed a clean rectangle where the manual had rested while someone searched it. A second clean shape, long and narrow, marked the place an object had been set beside it. "What fits there?" Armand asked. Meg did not cross the line. The manual's metal drawing weight, or the old inspection pencil case, both were stored on that shelf. Rena checked the cabinet inventory. Drawing weight present. Pencil case listed, not visible. Patel photographed the shelf before looking behind the other binders. The case was not there. "When did you last verify it?" Armand asked. "Monday during the archive audit," Rita said. "I photographed the full shelf. Case is visible." The missing case was a narrow brass tube used to protect long drafting pencils. Sylvia's card described it as orange pencils, lift. Patel compared Rena's Monday photograph to the current shelf. The manual had originally stood spine down between the lift inspection log and a book of kitchen ventilation diagrams. Tonight, it lay on its back. The intruder had opened the linen fold-out across the cabinet ledge, too wide to fit without removing the pencil case and drawing weight. The weight had been returned to the wrong slot. The pencil case had not. "Could it have rolled?" Meg asked. "Cabinet base is level," Patel said. "No opening at the rear. We searched the floor and adjacent shelves before treating it as removed." The cabinet alarm wire ran through a magnetic contact on the door. It had sounded because the intruder used a key rather than disabling the circuit. Whoever entered knew how to open the building, but either did not know about Rena's new alarm or had accepted the noise. "They expected to be gone before response," Rena said. 38 seconds from wing seal to cabinet," Armand replied. "They did not browse." The timing meant the manual had been their destination before they crossed the threshold. "Why would someone want an old pencil case?" Meg asked. Armand looked at the opened foldout. "We determined that before deciding they did." The key audit began at midnight. 3 current master keys remained in Rena's dual custody box. Sylvia's register listed 5 originals. One had been issued to Marlowe during winter work and never numbered on return. Another line read, "B.A., copy for boiler nights." Armand called Bernadette. She arrived 17 minutes later wearing a wool coat over a blue bathrobe. Her amber glasses were absent, which made her anger look less formal and more tired. "I told you I copied a key," she said before crossing the threshold. "I did not tell you I still had it, because I did not think I did." "Where should it be?" Armand asked. "In the sugar bowl at my house." "No one uses the bowl. It has ceramic pears on the lid. Did you check?" "The bowl is empty." "When did you last see the key?" "After Sylvia's funeral. I used it to bring back casserole dishes. I put it in the bowl when I got home." "Who knew?" "My daughter, Sylvia, possibly Marlowe. He saw me take it from there once when the boiler alarm called us both. Anyone in your house since the funeral? Half the church, 2 cousins, my daughter, the plumber, and a woman from probate who photographed furniture. Bernadette looked at Meg. If this is your method of proving I entered the inn in my bathrobe, it has flaws. Armand said, Did Mr. Fitch enter your house? The morning after Sylvia died. The boiler pressure dropped. He came through the kitchen while people were carrying food in and out. Did he go near the sugar bowl? The boiler stairs are beside the pantry. The bowl is on the top shelf. I did not follow him every second because my aunt was dead and someone had brought 3 identical lasagnas. Why keep the key there? Meg asked. Bernadette looked at her without glasses to shield the exhaustion. Because Sylvia called at all hours. Frozen trap, tripped boiler, guest locked out, pipe noise. If I put the key on my regular ring, I carried her emergency everywhere. The sugar bowl let me leave it in the kitchen until she needed me. And after she died, I should have surrendered it to the estate. I know that, but there was no estate except you, and you were still deciding when to arrive. The old grievance had again created real access without creating a murderer. Meg could not excuse the missing key. She could understand why Bernadette had not experienced it as something belonging to her. Did Sylvia ever ask for it back? She asked for everything back when she was angry and returned half of it when the boiler failed. Armand wrote the answer exactly. Can anyone confirm where you were at 9:16? My daughter called at 9:08. We spoke 23 minutes. Phone records will show it. She will also tell you I complained about the bathrobe belt, if corroboration requires texture. It often does. I stayed outside, Meg said. Bernadette's gaze dropped to the paired clogs. You finally followed an instruction. We are all experimenting with growth. Armand asked Bernadette to return home with Patel and preserve the sugar bowl, doors, and any camera footage. She agreed after requiring a receipt for the key she could not produce. Before allowing Meg and Rena upstairs, Armand required a temporary security plan. The west porch opening would remain uncovered until technicians finished, then a neutral contractor would board it under police observation. The inner west door received a second sensor. The service exterior lock would be changed after trace collection, with keys held by police and Rena under separate seals. You cannot sleep here tonight, he said. Meg looked toward the stairs. The building is clear. The building was entered with an unaccounted-for key. We do not know whether another copy exists. The evidence cabinet is in the lobby. An officer will remain until processing ends. Evidence can be guarded without requiring you to sleep above it. The old impulse rose. Stay because leaving meant abandoning responsibility to someone else. The emergency board had been explicit about that impulse less than 12 hours earlier. Where do you recommend? She asked. Rena opened the approved contact list. Joel marked the school district's emergency lodging partner. Small motel by the interstate. 2 rooms, exterior cameras, 24-hour desk. You already checked? During the 4 minutes when you were considering arguing. Armand said, Good. Meg requested written police custody for the inn and packed only medication, laptop, clothes, and Conrad's jacket. Rena carried the signed presence sheet out with them. They did not take estate originals or the renovation board. Leaving the building under guard bore no resemblance to choosing to leave it. Meg reminded herself that temporary absence could protect a place better than personal vigilance. The fact remained emotionally unpersuasive and operationally correct. They waited in the dining room for the motel confirmation while the manual examination continued. Meg stayed behind glass, rather than using departure as permission to drift toward the table. At 12:40, county technicians lifted the manual onto a clean table. Meg remained behind glass in the dining room doorway while they documented the foldout. The drafting tape along its center crease had separated at one end. Something bright caught beneath it. Stop, Meg said. Every gloved hand stopped. At the lower edge of the binding, between gray paper and translucent tape, a sliver of orange projected no wider than a fingernail. Not fabric. Paper, glossy enough to resist water, the same color as Dorian's inspection sheets. Armand leaned close without touching it. Photograph in place, he said. The intruder had opened the right manual. They had failed to find everything hidden inside it. Chapter 18. By 9 Friday morning, Meg could make Celeste Rusk responsible for everything except the 8 minutes in which Dorian Pritchard died. She built the case on the lobby renovation board while technicians continued processing the manual behind closed dining room doors. Second client. Celeste hired Dorian through Juniper Ridge. Report page. Her notebook carried the missing page number and the instruction to remove it. Sabotage. Her project credentials approved Marlowe's structural condition acceleration. Breaker log. Cobalt Inc. False 6:15 restoration time. Controller contradicted it. Boathouse sighting. She claimed orange fabric was Dorian walking after he was already dead. Departure. Northmark withdrew and Celeste prepared to leave Vermont as the route reconstruction ended. Rena stood on the guest side of the desk with a mug in both hands. Add access. Meg wrote @in after death, new site review routes. Not the same as service route knowledge, Rena said. Marlowe could have moved the body for her. Then put that on Marlowe's side. Meg drew a line between their names and wrote paid relationship above it. The theory looked complete because every fact had somewhere to go. Celeste designed the acquisition pressure, paid for sabotage, hired Dorian to monitor both reports, killed him when he threatened disclosure, and used Marlowe to stage the boathouse. Afterward, she removed the conflict page and altered the electrical time. What happens at 5:48? Rena asked. She confronts Dorian in the passage. How does she enter? Front door, kitchen door, service door. Which one? We do not know. Who rings the desk bell? Possibly her. Why? To see whether anyone is inside. Rena wrote a question mark beside the bell. You are behaving like Armand, Meg said. His questions have lower legal fees. Armand entered as if summoned by criticism. He carried the orange sliver in an evidence envelope and did not place it on the board. County will examine the paper and manual under warrant, he said. No one opens the foldout until the evidence plan is approved. Meg pointed to Celeste's column. We have the plan. You have a plan. Walk me through what is wrong with it. He started at the top. Second client supported. Page removal, strongly supported, pending full document comparison. Sabotage payment, supported, though the approving user remains disputed. False log, likely Celeste, not yet proved by Inc. False sighting, demonstrably unreliable, intent unresolved. Departure, lawful by itself. Together they support fraud, evidence tampering, obstruction, and conspiracy inquiries. And murder. Armand uncapped a marker. Under Celeste's name, he wrote 548, service passage. What evidence places her there? Meg looked at the column. She was at the property. At 6:40, by camera and 2 witnesses. What puts her here 52 minutes earlier? Her timeline is false. The paper log is false. Her arrival time is independently supported. She could have come and left before returning. Vehicle camera? The service drive is not covered. Phone? Meg waited. Her phone connected to the rental cottage network from 5:21 to 6:09, Armand said. That is not absolute location proof. It makes a secret round trip less likely. She could have left the phone. Yes. Possible is not the standard your board implies. Meg pointed to the line between Celeste and Marlowe. They work together. If he was in the passage, she is responsible. Legally responsible for which agreed act. Sabotage does not automatically make one conspirator responsible for an unplanned homicide by another. We need evidence of knowledge, direction, assistance, or a common unlawful objective that reaches the death. She altered the log afterward, which may show she learned enough to protect the acquisition scheme, or Marlowe. It may also show knowledge of the killing. We prove which. The line on the board was no bridge. It marked the gap it crossed. You agree she committed serious crimes, Meg said. Yes. You agree she had motive to stop Dorian? Yes. You agree she tried to make him alive at the boathouse? I agree the current evidence supports that she altered a record and made a false or reckless statement about the figure she saw. How many qualifications does innocence require? The same number guilt requires. Rena put down her mug. What evidence puts Marlowe in the passage? Knowledge of the door, controller request, cart route, coupling, chalk, and audio phrase. Strong pattern. No direct placement yet. Bernadette? No death window placement. Key issue under investigation. Inez? Excluded. 4 suspects had become 2 overlapping theories and 1 missing moment. Rena drew a smaller box beneath the timeline. Knowledge test. Celeste did not know the linen door needed lifting. She called it locked during the site walk and waited for Marlowe to open it. She could have learned later. Roommate towel sequence. She had access to site records. Not the housekeeping binder. It stayed in Sylvia's desk until we inventoried it. Marlowe could have selected the towel. Then Celeste does not explain the body movement. Marlowe does, because he helped her. Armand said, that is a possible division. What evidence shows she asked for help with the body rather than damaged joists? Meg pointed to the altered log. She protected the staged scene. After it existed, which means she knew. Knew what? That Dorian was dead, that Marlowe had moved him, that her paid contractor had created a disaster threatening Northmark? Those lead to different charges. Rena added 3 lines under knowledge and left each unchecked. Meg looked again at the service door column. Celeste had money, motive, and authority. Marlowe had domestic knowledge, the degrading category people used for how buildings actually worked. It irritated Meg to imagine the larger crime depending on the smaller expertise. That irritation was not evidence either. If she directed the scheme, she said, she does not become innocent because she delegated the physical parts. No, Armand replied. She becomes guilty of the acts the evidence proves she directed. County officers detained Celeste at the rental cottage under warrants for evidence tampering and fraud-related offenses. Her attorney arranged a controlled departure through the cottage's rear drive to avoid the people already gathering near the road. By early afternoon, Armand was permitted to summarize the warrant basis to Meg as property owner. Portal logs tied Celeste's credentials to Dorian's engagement and the Marlowe payment. Notebook indentations matched the missing disclosure page number. A forensic comparison found the breaker log ink consistent with 2 cobalt cartridges recovered from Celeste's work case, though the brand was common and the result not exclusive. Most damaging was Celeste's own partial statement. She admits making the 6:15 entry at 7:35, Armand said. She says Marlowe told her 6:15 was when he requested power and that the controller stored completion time rather than requested time. Drew says Marlowe called him shortly before 7:18. Phone records support Drew. Then Celeste invented the request time, or accepted it without checking. Her statement says Northmark required a complete utility log before the next morning's committee call. Why write it herself? She says no estate representative was present. Marlowe had already left, and she believed she was correcting an omission. Rena said, in someone else's building. On someone else's safety record. Yes. The report page? Meg asked. She denies taking it. She acknowledges writing the notebook instruction but says M meant Marlowe, and the owner copy was a separate due diligence memo she wanted removed from the deal room packet before he returned. Convenient. Also testable. Northmark is producing packet versions. Did she know Dorian was dead when she changed the log? Armand closed his notebook. She says she knew police were at the property and that Marlowe told her Dorian had suffered an accident at the boathouse. She denies seeing the body or knowing the scene was staged. Yet she claimed to see him alive. She said she saw the orange fabric first and learned about the accident later. She interpreted the figure as Dorian because Marlowe told her he had been working below. Marlowe again. Yes. The statement placed him inside every explanation while keeping Celeste at its center. Meg heard coordination. Armand heard facts still requiring order. The gathering reached Ashworth House before lunch. Laura Vachon brought a coffee urn for officers and refused to call it celebration. 2 Lake Association members stood on the public road and told a local reporter Northmark had killed Dorian for shoreline control. Someone left a handwritten sign at the inn gate. We keep our lake. Meg removed it. You agree with the sentiment, Rena said. I disagree with using a homicide victim as a zoning slogan. The reporter asked whether Meg had lured Celeste back to the inn after discovering the second client. Meg said no comment and referred all case questions to police. The reporter then asked whether Ashworth House would accept preservation donations. That question also received no comment, because accepting money before forming an entity was how kindness became accounting trouble. Joel arrived with cardboard cups and redirected people away from the driveway without pretending the property was public space. He told the Lake Association members that supporting the inn meant leaving room for emergency vehicles. They obeyed him faster than they had obeyed the police tape, possibly because a music teacher could remember who had ignored instructions at 3 generations of school concerts. You do this often? Tuba parents, Joel said. Higher stakes than most people imagine. He looked at the sign she had removed. The town wants a victory. It has charges. Charges are paperwork. Victory fits on poster board. Celeste may have killed him. Then the evidence will not become weaker because we wait to print the sign. Bernadette called to say the town had apparently decided Celeste was guilty because she owned a good coat and came from elsewhere.
5 minutes later, Inez called to say outsiders often behaved badly in coats.
Neither asked what the warrants charged. The local news alert appeared at 1:03. Developer agent held in Ashworth House death investigation. The article correctly said Celeste had not been charged with homicide. Its first reader comment said, "Murderer caught." The second asked whether the inn would reopen for regatta weekend. By 2-3 people had called the front desk to offer congratulations. One was a former guest who remembered Sylvia giving her extra blankets during an October storm. Another wanted to book the room where the developer got caught, despite Celeste never having stayed at the inn. The third asked whether Northmark's withdrawal meant lakefront furnishings would be sold cheaply. Rena made a response script. The investigation remains active. No homicide charge has been announced. The inn is closed and accepts no reservations, tours, donations, or purchase inquiries.
Meg used it twice and discovered repetition did not make people hear the middle sentence.
Laura returned for the coffee urn and stood beside the desk while Meg rinsed its lid. People want the danger contained in a person they can dislike, she said. Celeste made herself available. She did. Dorian also made himself available. And nobody is asking who he was now. The correction stopped Meg. Dorian had been narrow-faced, impatient with approximate language, unwilling to drink coffee that might affect his handwriting. He had accepted a conflicted second engagement and still attempted to disclose it. He had photographed damage someone expected him to call age. The town had reduced him to an engineer killed by a developer because that version fit the sign. "Did you know him?" Meg asked.
He inspected the historical room roof after the ice storm.
Told us the plaster crack was decorative distress, not structural distress.
I disliked him for a week and trusted the report for 5 years. Laura dried the urn lid.
Solving his death should include remembering he was difficult in complete sentences. Meg added Dorian's name to the board above the suspect columns, not as a heading over his own death, but as a reminder that the blank at 548 belonged to a person, not merely a timeline. Meg read the comments until Rena closed the laptop. The town wants one crime, Rena said. Fraud is complicated. Murder is shaped like an answer. Celeste may still be the answer. Yes. You say that as if it means no. I say it as if possible remains possible in both directions.
At 3, the town inspector emailed notice that the permit file would remain suspended pending a revised structural hazard plan.
Northmark's withdrawal did not restore the property's value. Celeste's detention did not restore Dorian. The public's certainty repaired nothing. Rena returned to the Room 8 linen inventory because the police had released high-resolution photographs of the opened paper bundle for a state audit. The original closure seal had been a narrow strip of reinforced packing tape signed by Sylvia. In the Wednesday morning photograph, the tape appeared intact. In the post-death image, one end sagged. We assumed the adhesive failed, Rena said. It was cut. She magnified the edge. The reinforced fibers ended in a single broad chop, slightly curved at one side. A second shallow score crossed the paper beneath it. Utility blade, Meg said. Broad blade, at least 3/4 of an inch. Rena opened the evidence photograph of Celeste's belongings. Her cobalt notebook, phone, keys, and a small silver paper knife had been documented during detention. The knife's blade was narrow, pointed, and less than 1/2 inch wide. Could it make that cut? Meg asked. Not in one stroke. It would leave a pointed start or require 2 passes. The seal showed one flat pressure mark. Marlowe's March and mica receipt listed utility blades beside blue chalk and the brass coupling. Contractors used broad blades every day. So did housekeepers opening boxes, plumbers cutting insulation, and anyone with access to the basement shop. Ink connected Celeste to the paper log. Her paper knife fit her work and her notebook. The towel seal had been cut with someone else's tool. Meg looked at the board where Celeste's crimes had arranged themselves into murder. One edge no longer fit. Chapter 19. The town did not close Ashworth House indefinitely. It used the phrase, "no review date can presently be established," which occupied more words and produced the same result. Meg read the notice Saturday morning at the motel's breakfast counter. The permit office required final structural evidence limits, a new contractor plan uncontaminated by the sabotage scheme, police release of the service route, and proof that no hidden shaft opening compromised the 6-room fire barrier. The insurer's email arrived before she finished. Coverage review would remain open pending the homicide findings and a determination of whether intentional damage fell under vandalism, contractor fraud, or an excluded commercial act.
Every system has decided to wait for every other system, she said.
Rena buttered toast with the motel's only available knife, a flexible plastic object designed to discourage both theft and success. They have decided you can spend money while they wait. Heating, security, professional supervision, temporary shoring, legal review, and motel rooms continued. Guest revenue did not. Northmark's offer was gone. The estate account contained enough to preserve choices for several weeks, not enough to preserve all of them. At 9:30, Leonard called with another buyer. Hearthline Heritage Lodging owned 4 converted inns in New England. Its acquisitions officer had followed the news and offered to purchase Ashworth House subject to title review, but without a full structural contingency. The price was higher than Northmark's reduced offer and lower than its original one. Closing could occur in 21 days. They understand the investigation? Meg asked. They understand the public facts and will accept restricted access, Leonard said. They require broad indemnity for undisclosed criminal conduct and the right to demolish any portion their engineer deems uneconomical, including the West Wing, including the whole inn if permitted. The offer arrived while he spoke. No wellness language, no preservation promises, no deadline disguised as concern. Hearthline intended to buy a distressed property and retain only what produced a return. The honesty was almost restful. How long do I have? Until Monday at noon. Another weekend converted into a decision. Rena read the offer at the motel desk. They can terminate my position at closing. The severance clause protects you if you accept before then. It protects 6 weeks. The inn loses the staff structure before it exists. You have not accepted. Neither have you. Meg folded the paper. Selling to Hearthline would pay valid wage claims, stabilize the estate, end the permit fight, and transfer the building to people with capital. It would also reward no known conspirator. A week earlier, she would have called that responsible. She asked Leonard to arrange a call with Hearthline's acquisitions officer. The woman joined from Boston at 11 and answered without Celeste's rehearsed warmth. We buy difficult buildings, she said. We preserve features that produce value and replace those that do not. What produces value here? Meg asked. Lake frontage, road access, main house massing, and the dining room if fire separation is economical. The boathouse? Likely replacement. West Wing? Likely removal. Staff? We hire after design approval, meaning current roles end. Meaning, we do not inherit operations that do not exist. The answer was factual. So was Rena's provisional contract, Drew's possible work, Piers's dock relationship, and the unpaid history that made Bernadette believe buildings belonged to whoever answered them at midnight. Hearthline would acquire real estate without inheriting those obligations unless the purchase agreement forced it to. Would you operate an inn? Lodging is one option. Private event conversion may perform better. No lie, no promise, no room in the model for what had not yet become revenue. After the call, Leonard said, a transparent buyer can still want something you do not. That is almost comforting. It should be clarifying. Meg requested a draft escrow for Bernadette's wage claim and a disclosure schedule preserving all police evidence. If she sold, she would not let speed convert unresolved duties into the buyer's convenient ignorance. Now she could see the 6 possible rooms, the service systems Rena had organized, the dock estimate Piers had separated into repair and replacement, and the first work scopes not written by Marlowe. Seeing them did not create money. They returned to the inn under the temporary security protocol. An officer held the service key. A neutral carpenter had boarded the west porch. The lobby smelled of fresh plywood, stale coffee, and radiator dust. Rena went upstairs to audit the fire stop photographs. Meg stood at the front desk with Houseline's offer. Banana, coffee, and ramen help her deck clean exactly. Meg had always wanted to live in a hot city where the good was done. When the years began, again, Meg called upon Hearthline's offer. A transparent buyer wants something you do not. Meg stood at the front desk with Hearthline's offer. Piers boarded the west porch, and the neutral carpenter had boarded the west porch.
The lobby smelled of fresh plywood, stale coffee, and radiator dust. Rena went upstairs to audit the fire stop photographs.
Meg stood at the front desk with Houseline's offer, banana coffee, and ramen help her deck clean exactly. Meg had always wanted to live in a hot city where the good was done.
When the years began, again, Meg called upon Hearthline's offer. Piers boarded the west porch, and the neutral carpenter had boarded the west porch, and the lobby smelled of fresh plywood, stale coffee, and radiator dust.
Stored, without a deadline, because wanting it together felt like ownership. During his illness, Conrad once apologized for using up the in years. Meg told him there had never been a real plan. The denial comforted him and erased her at the same time. She had not corrected it. Ashworth House was not the main inn, and keeping it would not recover the person who once wanted that future. Selling it would not prove she had never wanted one. She had loved him. He had loved her. Love had not made either of them an accurate forecast of the person who survived. The jacket cuff was not original. It was still useful. Meg placed Hearthline's offer in the Decisions Not Yet folder rather than the signature tray. Then she erased the suspect board. Rena found her drawing 5 columns across the blank surface. Sabotage, killing, body movement, page removal, log alteration. You left out acquisition fraud, Rena said. It creates motive and payment. These are the acts we keep treating as one continuous event. They began with what the evidence proved. Sabotage, recent saw cuts through Marlowe's stabilization blocks. Celeste's project credentials approved the payment. Marlowe entered the West Wing privately with a compact saw. Both fit. Killing, Dorian confronted a low-voiced person in the service passage at 5:42. The speaker used Marlowe's language. The coupling had been removed, cleaned, and returned. No evidence placed Celeste at the inn before 6:40. Body movement. Roommate towel cut with a broad utility blade. Loaded laundry cart down the service drive. Lifting latch. Blue chalk transfer. Celeste did not know the linen sequence or the door behavior. Marlowe did. Page removal. Notebook indentation and project portal tied Celeste to page 17. She entered after Dorian's death and had reason to remove her second client disclosure. Log alteration. Celeste admitted writing 6:15 based on Marlowe's claim. Cobalt cartridges matched the in class. Controller and phone records disproved the time. Meg added a second row beneath the acts. When? Sabotage occurred weeks before Dorian's visit. Killing began after 5:42. Body movement followed between roughly 6 and 6:22. Page removal happened after Celeste arrived at 6:40. Log alteration occurred at 7:35. The timeline made the separation physical. Celeste could not be in the passage at 5:48 without leaving her phone, avoiding every camera, completing a round trip, and arriving again as if for the first time. Possible required invention. Marlowe's workday already placed him at the property. His later location remained unsupported, and he called Drew about power before the stage scene needed light. Now add purpose, Rena said. Sabotage lowered the sale price. Killing stopped Dorian's immediate disclosure. Moving the body disguised location and method. Removing the page concealed the dual client connection. Changing the log made the boathouse appear lit, while Dorian was supposedly alive. The last 2 acts protect Celeste's acquisition scheme, Meg said. The middle 2 protect the person who killed him inside the inn. One conspiracy had split when the risk changed. Celeste responded to the commercial disaster. Marlowe responded to personal exposure. Their later lies aligned because each needed Dorian's discovery to look less credible, not because they had necessarily agreed on death. Rena stepped back. Celeste fits 1, 4, and 5. She paid for 1 and committed 4 and 5 herself. Marlowe fits 1, 2, and 3. Meg added intrusion as a 6th column. The intruder knew the west porch, internal route, cabinet location, manual, and likely Bernadette's hidden key. Marlowe had entered Bernadette's kitchen after Sylvia's funeral. He arrived minutes after the alarm, with plywood cut to the exact porch opening. Celeste had been in police custody. The crimes touch, Meg said. They are not the same crime. Rena nodded. A package is not the same thing as a guest. Neither is a conspiracy the same thing as a murder. The distinction dissolved the satisfaction that had made Celeste's column attractive. There was no single villain whose arrest restored order. Celeste had helped attack the building and corrupted the records after Dorian died. Inez had diverted public money. Bernadette had concealed letters and a key. Marlowe's acts could exist beside all of them without absorbing their guilt or lending them his. Meg circled the killing and body movement columns. Marlowe knew the coupling was missing before police named it. He replaced the same model the next morning. He called Drew to restore power. He knew the controller explanation Celeste repeated. He lifted the linen door automatically. His receipt includes the broad blades and blue chalk. His phrase is on Dorian's recording. And he had 40 minutes alone in the West Wing weeks before the cuts were found, Rena said. He said the building was done pretending. Why kill Dorian instead of letting Celeste handle the report? Meg looked at the market readiness payment. Because Dorian found fresh cuts in Marlowe's own work. Celeste could lose a deal. Marlowe could lose his license, company, clients, and freedom. Dorian told him the owner would know. Motive, not proof. Meg created a final row. Unique fit. Celeste's unique fit was paperwork she controlled. Juniper Ridge portal, notebook, deal room report, breaker log. Marlowe's unique fit was building behavior he had learned through work. The lifting latch, cart recess, hose coupling, controller call, West Wing route, and exact porch opening. The murder and staging depended on the second kind of knowledge. Could Bernadette fit it? Rena asked. She knew the door and linen, not the coupling replacement chalk, saw cuts, controller call, or Dorian's phrase. Her phone call alibi covers the intrusion. Celeste could learn building details from Marlowe. But her actions show gaps. She fumbled the door. She interpreted fabric as a walking person. She used the wrong time Marlowe supplied. Rena underlined, used the wrong time. A person staging the body would know when the power actually came on. That was the distinction Meg had missed. Celeste's falsification was informed by Marlowe and still technically wrong. She was protecting a story she had been given, not necessarily one she had performed. Rena drew a box around the manual column. Then why break in after Celeste was already under investigation? To retrieve something Dorian hid before the confrontation. The missing inspection pencil case. The opened linen route fold-out. The sliver of orange waterproof paper under the drafting tape. Dorian's voice note said photographs were backed to secondary storage. Meg took out her phone. Armand already knows about the sliver, Rena said. I am not calling to tell him it exists. I am calling to tell him Dorian's phrase may identify what is behind it. Armand answered on the third ring. Meg gave him the 5 acts in order, then the intrusion. She did not say Marlowe was the killer until she had separated what supported each conclusion. What changed, he asked. The towel blade does not fit Celeste. More importantly, she does not fit the service route. I kept using Marlowe as her physical extension, without evidence that she directed the killing. And now? Marlowe fits the acts Celeste cannot perform. Her crimes made his easier to hide, but they do not explain them. Better. Not agreement. Dorian said photographs were backed to secondary storage, Meg continued. His orange waterproof pencil is missing. Sylvia stored orange pencils in a brass tube beside the lift manual. The intruder removed that tube and opened the fold-out. We are pursuing the compartment under the warrant. I know. I am not asking to open it. That is also better. Armand arrived at the inn 20 minutes later, rather than letting the theory remain a phone summary. He read each column without taking the marker. What do you want me to do with this? He asked. Nothing outside your evidence. I want you to test the acts separately. Already in progress. Test whether Celeste's 615 entry came from Marlowe before Drew restored power. If he gave her a time he knew was false, he was constructing the boathouse story before she altered the paper. Phone extraction may show that. Test his shop footage against the plywood cut. Test whether the cleaning product in the coupling matches what Marlowe carried, rather than the inn's general supply. Armand looked at her. Those are requests, not instructions. Yes. Also already in process mostly. Then civic education has produced a useful civilian. Do not put that on a business card. He pointed to killing. We still need convergence, not only fit. Pattern identifies where to look. It does not replace the thing we find. Meg turned toward the sealed manual room. Then we find what Dorian backed up. County analysis called it 4. The orange fragment had the same polymer coating, paper fiber blend, and printed edge rule as sheets recovered from Dorian's inspection pad. It was not torn from any sheet in police possession. The fragment was Dorian's paper. Something from his missing backup remained trapped inside the manual. Chapter 20. The manual opened at 8:06 Sunday morning under a warrant, 2 cameras, and the supervision of people who trusted none of the 3. County had moved the service elevator volume to a temporary evidence room at the Dunnet station. Meg and Rena watched through glass because Meg had identified the orange paper and Rena could explain Sylvia's inventory. Neither entered the processing area. Before the seal was cut, Patel read the chain aloud. Cabinet photographed at 11:03 Thursday night. Manual bagged at 12:21. Orange edge observed at 12:47. Scene seal applied at 1:09. Transported to county storage at 2:14. Returned under warrant at 7:42 Sunday morning. Every transfer had 2 signatures. The sequence would have seemed excessive to Meg a week earlier. Now she understood that evidence did not remain trustworthy through good intentions. Trust was built from all the moments someone could have altered a thing, and the records showing they had not. The examiner asked Meg to confirm the manual's visible condition from behind the glass. Gray cloth cover, brass fasteners, linen route tab 3rd, drafting tape along the center fold, upper layer torn at the lower end after the intrusion. Any reason you need to enter the room? Meg looked at the orange sliver. Her hands wanted to solve the physical problem, to lift the tape, ease the paper, prevent a technician unfamiliar with Sylvia's repairs from tearing it. No, she said. I can identify from here. The answer was small. It represented a week of difficult education. The document examiner began with the cover, page count, fold-out sequence, repair tape, and every visible edge. She used a low-angle light to photograph the pocket of shadow beneath the linen route binding. The tape is not a factory repair, she said. 2 layers. The upper layer was added after the lower adhesive collected dust. Armand stood beside Meg with a copy of the warrant inventory. Meaning? Meaning someone repaired the fold-out twice. I will not tell you who or why from dirt. The examiner humidified no paper and cut no tape. She lifted the already separated end with blunt polymer tools until the orange fragment extended another 1/4 inch. It was wrapped around something cylindrical. Stop, Meg said, then realized no one had moved improperly. The examiner glanced through the glass. We are stopped. Rena folded her arms. Professional reflex. A narrow orange sleeve emerged from the binding. It was not one of Sylvia's pencils. It was Dorian's waterproof inspection pencil protector, flattened and rolled tightly around a strip of coated paper. The metal clip had been removed so the sleeve could fit beneath the fold-out hinge. Inside the rolled paper sat a micro SD card. The examiner photographed it in place, separated each layer, and assigned 3 evidence numbers. The paper strip carried Dorian's handwriting. Backup B, 540, if main file conflicted. Conflicted, Meg said. He expected the client issue to affect his files. Or the structural findings, Armand replied. We let the contents tell us. The card went to a digital evidence specialist at a clean workstation. Its write protect adapter was photographed before insertion. The specialist created a forensic image, verified the hash twice, and worked only from the copy. The first directory contained 43 photographs. The second held 2 audio fragments and a text export of Dorian's inspection notes. File times matched his phone and camera within 3 seconds. At 3:05 Wednesday afternoon, Dorian photographed the West Wing cuts from 4 angles. The images were sharper than the recovery copies police already held. Pale fibers feathered from the kerfs. Blue chalk crossed Marlowe's stamped stabilization blocks. A folding rule established depth. At 3:11, Dorian photographed a red-latched saw case on the west service landing. The label read, Fitch Restoration. Marlowe said Dorian could have borrowed a saw, Meg said. A case is not the saw, Armand replied. The next image showed the case open. Compact reciprocating tool, oscillating cutter, 2 broad utility knives, blue chalk reel, solvent bottle, and a folded gray shop rag. Dorian had photographed the serial plates. The digital specialist opened Dorian's text export beside the images. Each photograph carried a note code. Tool case not present 9 a.m. Walk appears after MF returned. Blue reel color brand consistent with active layout marks, broad knife width approximate 22 millimeters. 22 millimeters was just over 7/8 of an inch, wide enough to make the flat roommate seal cut in 1 stroke. Did he measure the knife? Meg asked. Image includes a scale, the specialist said. We can estimate dimensions. Physical comparison requires recovery. The solvent bottle label named a chlorinated cleaner marketed for mold and mineral residue. County's coupling analysis had found a chlorinated product in the threads. Common cleaner? Rena asked. Commercially available, Armand said. The formulation may be comparable, not unique. The serial number on the reciprocating tool matched a Fitch restoration insurance schedule produced after the sabotage warrant. The oscillating cutter appeared on the same schedule. Marlowe had claimed both were at a Dutton Road project during Dorian's inspection. The client had already denied receiving them. One photograph connected no crime by itself. Together, Dorian had preserved the set of tools later distributed across the cuts, towel seal, and cleaned hardware. County warrant for Marlowe's tools? Rena asked. Drafted, Armand said. This supports it. At 5:37, Dorian's images moved to the service passage. He photographed the wall hose outline, the two brass couplings, and mineral scale around the upper hook. A second frame showed the cleaned coupling still darker than it appeared after his death. At 5:39, he photographed a polished metal access plate beside the boarded lift. The flash turned it into a warped mirror. In the reflection stood Marlowe, his face bent across the metal, recognizable through the red flush at his collar and the white Fitch logo on his jacket. One hand held the black saw case, the other pointed toward Dorian. The image time was 3 minutes before the voice note began. Meg looked at Armand. Direct placement. At 5:39, strong identification, subject to verification. 3 minutes before Dorian recorded the confrontation. Yes, the specialist enlarged the reflection without inventing pixels. Marlowe's truck key hung from his belt on a blue spiral cord. One brass tag was visible beneath it, oval and larger than a vehicle key. A second reflective surface appeared at the frame's edge, the chrome trim of Dorian's moisture meter. Its smaller reflection showed Marlowe's left hand closed around the upper coupling while he spoke. He touched it before the confrontation, Meg said. The image shows contact or near contact, Armand replied. We will establish scale and angle. The timestamp was embedded in the camera file, the backup card, and Dorian's server manifest. County compared all three. No edit history appeared between capture and backup. Could Dorian have changed the note afterward? Rena asked. Text notes were exported at 5:40, before the voice recording. The server received a hash at the same time, but not the full images because signal failed. The card preserves the local originals. Dorian had built redundancy because he distrusted the client conflict. Marlowe's intrusion had targeted the physical backup, but the partial server record now authenticated what the card contained. Master key, Rena said. Possible building key, Armand corrected. Sylvia's register listed a temporary master, issued to Marlowe without a return number. Bernadette's copy remained missing. The reflection did not show which key he carried. It showed he carried one. The final photograph was blurred. It captured the floor near Dorian's boot, a corner of Marlowe's case, and the edge of the access plate. In its metadata, Dorian had added one line, MF present, says C asked him to correct condition before review. Celeste had paid for sabotage. Marlowe had described it as correction. The first audio fragment duplicated the voice note from Dorian's phone. The second began 6 seconds earlier and had less water damage. County's enhanced version reduced mechanical hum without removing frequencies from the voices. An audio examiner joined by video and explained each processing step. She removed a steady electrical frequency documented in a clean passage recording. She did not fill missing syllables, splice words, or use generative reconstruction. The enhanced track made existing frequencies easier to hear. It did not create speech absent from the source. For voice comparison, County used Marlowe's recorded police interviews and public hearing microphone. Rhythm, vowel shape, and a repeated throat catch were consistent, but the examiner would not claim individual identification from the damaged clip alone. The reflected photograph independently places him there, she said. The audio is evaluated with that context, not as a substitute for it. Dorian said, You cannot call a new cut existing condition. Marlowe's voice answered, clearer than before. Old is old. She paid for the condition she was buying. Celeste? Dorian asked. You know who signs. Paper moved. The service door struck its threshold. Dorian said, I disclose the second client and your cuts to the owner tonight. You don't get to destroy 20 years of work, over wood that comes out anyway. The fragment ended in the same impact and skid preserved on the phone. No confession. No description of the fatal act. Marlowe's presence, voice, motive, and knowledge aligned within seconds of the injury sound. Armand called the state's attorney from the station corridor. He gave facts in clipped order: warrant recovery, card hash, photograph time, reflection identification, tool serials, audio comparison. He did not use the word solved. When he returned, he said, applications are going out for Marlowe's residence, shop, truck, phone, and financial accounts. Officers are locating him now. Arrest warrant? Meg asked. The state is seeking it with the searches. We do not announce timing. Does he know about the card? Meg asked. No public filing identifies it. Warrant materials may remain sealed while officers execute. He knows he missed something in the manual, which is why you and Rena do not return to the inn alone. Armand revised the property safety plan before allowing them to leave. Patel would escort them. Exterior officers would remain within response distance, without turning the inn into visible bait. The service corridor stayed locked under police key control. Meg received one alert phrase, Zone 2 is cold, to text if Marlowe arrived, called, or created pressure for access. Why a phrase? Rena asked. A plain emergency message can be seen by the person creating it, Armand said. The phrase tells dispatch to treat the contact as case-related and not call back. And then, Meg asked, move to the public front area if safe. Keep witnesses together. Do not enter the service route. Do not tell him what the card contains. Do not attempt to delay him if you can leave safely. Meg repeated each instruction. This time, Armand did not make her say the whole list twice. Celeste, the audio strengthens conspiracy and sabotage allegations. It does not show she agreed to the killing. Her counsel is being notified of new evidence obligations. Separate charges, separate acts. The document examiner returned to the opened binding. The hidden pocket was not part of the original manual. Someone had slit the lower paper hinge years earlier and repaired it with drafting tape, creating a narrow channel. Sylvia may have used it for loose diagrams. Dorian had used it because he recognized a hiding place built into ordinary damage. Rena asked to see the inventory card enlarged. Sylvia's line, orange pencil /lift, had a faint mark after it, previously read as a slash. Under oblique light, it resembled a narrow arrow pointing toward the fold-out tab. Did Sylvia create the pocket? Meg asked. Cannot determine, the examiner said. The lower adhesive is at least several years old. The upper repair is newer. Dorian inserted his sleeve after both. Sylvia may have hidden maintenance notes there, or merely repaired a tear in a useful way. The answer did not need to become a message from the dead. It was enough that two practical people, years apart, had recognized storage where others saw damage. Why the pencil case missing from the cabinet? Rena asked. Patel brought in the intrusion photographs. The intruder appears to have removed it, believing the backup was inside. The case has not been recovered. They opened the correct foldout, Meg said. The examiner pointed to the repair. The sleeve was behind the lower layer. Opening the foldout exposes the pocket only if you lift the old tape from the binding side. The intruder opened from the outer edge and tore the upper repair. They saw the pencil case inventory label, took the obvious container, and left when the alarm sounded. Marlowe knew Sylvia stored orange pencils beside the lift manual. He knew Dorian used an orange inspection pencil. He had entered looking for the container, not the exact hiding method. The plywood, Meg said. Did his shop camera show when he cut it? No footage, Armand said. The recorder was unplugged at 8:50 the night of the intrusion. Power restored at 10:31. His phone left home at 9:08 and reached the inn area before the alarm. Location data is approximate, but inconsistent with his statement that he stayed at the shop until dispatch. Bernadette's key? Search of his shop will include it. Her daughter confirms the call alibi. Door camera from a neighbor shows Bernadette's car at home. The evidence did not erase every uncertainty. It converged where the murder required it. Meg and Rena returned to Ashworth House at 1 under police escort. The competitor offer waited in decisions, not yet. Meg did not move it. Patel walked the common areas with them. The public lobby route remained clear to both exits. The fire doors stood open on magnetic holds, able to close if power failed or the manual release was pressed. The service keys stayed in Patel's custody. Rena placed the presence sheet by the front door. Meg, Rena, Drew, Patel. No guests. She texted Joel that the emergency board was active and asked him not to come unless requested. That felt unnatural, Meg said. Not summoning help into danger is an advanced hospitality skill. Drew arrived through the kitchen entrance and signed in before opening the electrical panel. They knew police were seeking Marlowe, but not what the card showed. Armand had told them to route all contact through the department. Patel completed the escort log at 1:20 and returned to the station with the service key. The exterior response team remained out of sight 2 roads away while warrants were signed. Rena crossed Patel's name from the presence sheet and wrote the departure time. Drew had just opened the electrical panel for the supervised east stair lighting check when their phone rang. Marlowe, Drew said after seeing the display. Armand had instructed known contacts not to answer direct calls if officers were locating him. Drew let it go to voicemail. A message notification appeared. They played it on speaker after sending a copy to Armand. Marlowe's voice was brisk, already moving. Ashworth lobby line is leaking. Tell Meg I'm bringing the repair kit. Main shut off behind the service lift. 10 minutes. Drew looked toward the lobby ceiling. There is no lobby line service call. A drop of water struck the slate floor beside the front desk. Then another. Marlowe was on his way to fix a leak no one had reported.
Chapter 21. The first drop landed at 1:37.
By 1:39, water ran from the lobby ceiling in a line wide enough to strike both sides of the front desk. Rena moved the competitor offer, presence sheet, and emergency binder to the parlor table. Drew killed the chandelier and desk circuits at the lobby subpanel and looked up through the spreading stain. Meg rolled the desk computer away from the drip and stopped before moving anything else. The lobby had been photographed after the intrusion, but a new event required a new condition record. Rena took 4 wide images and a short video showing the water's origin, path, and time. No buckets under the ceiling until we check plaster stability, Drew said. They used the renovation board's wet area protocol. Close the rope line, move people beyond the fall radius, shut electricity serving the affected zone, then control water from a safe valve. A week ago, Meg would have placed pans first and discovered electrical risk later. The ceiling bulged beside the old chandelier medallion. Water followed a repaired crack toward the desk and dripped from the brass bell's handle. The front stair remained dry. The service passage entrance did not. Leak path is drawing toward the old riser, Drew said. Whoever wants the branch valve can argue this is the shortest access. Whoever created it could choose the argument, Meg replied. Supply line, not drain, they said. Pressure is building above the plaster. Drew checked the mechanical room dashboard on their phone. The building pressure had fallen 12 pounds in less than 3 minutes. No alert had been sent because the system logged readings but had no outbound module. They compared the graph to yesterday's test. The line had held steady overnight, then dropped sharply at 1:35, 2 minutes before the first visible drip. Not a slow failure, Drew said. A fitting opened or a line split. Could age do that? Yes. Could a wrench do it? Also yes. We need the ceiling open later to know. Meg sent Armand the agreed message. Zone 2 is cold. Marlowe voicemail says he is coming. Active lobby leak. 3 people inside. The response indicator changed to delivered. No call came back. Rena took the grab sheet and positioned herself near the front door. We leave if the ceiling starts dropping or he blocks safe access. Agreed, Meg said. Drew opened the utility map on the parlor table. Exterior curb valve shuts the hole in. Lobby branch isolation should be above the coat cupboard. But the old plan routes it behind the service lift. Can you reach it without the service corridor? Not the branch valve. I can use the curb key outside. Do that. Drew reached for the long key beside the staff entrance. Marlowe's truck entered the circular drive. The voicemail had promised 10 minutes. He arrived in 4. She sent a second silent update through the emergency app. Vehicle on property, front approach, no visible weapon. The message logged without a notification tone. Exterior team knows, she said quietly. Meg did not ask how close they were. Knowing might tempt her to manage toward their arrival instead of the safest available exit. Meg moved beside the parlor doors, keeping the desk between herself and the front entrance. Drew, stay inside until he is out of the truck. Then use the kitchen exit and curb valve. Do not pass him. You are giving orders now? Drew asked. Temporary emergency authority under Rena's plan. Rena said, accurate. Marlowe came through the front door, carrying a red plumbing case and a rolled canvas tool bag. He wore his Fitch restoration jacket despite the warm afternoon. No rain marked his shoulders. The red case matched the one photographed in Dorian's backup. One latch carried a white stress mark. The canvas bag was long enough for a compact saw or curb key. Meg recorded both without looking down to write. Marlowe wore no shoe covers and did not ask whether the ceiling had been electrically isolated. A contractor responding to an unknown active leak should have asked before stepping into wet space. His gaze went first to the ceiling, then the service passage door, then the three people. Where is the chief? He asked. Not here, Meg said. Good. He'd let the plaster come down while he photographed the water. Who told you the line was leaking? Marlowe set the case on the slate. Pressure monitor. Drew looked at him. This building has no pressure monitor. The boiler makeup gauge sends alerts. Not to you. We changed the contact account Friday. Marlowe's eyes flicked toward Drew, recalculating. Old controller still has my number. We factory reset it. Water struck the desk bell. The brass note rang once, bright beneath the hiss. Marlowe opened the tool bag. Argue after the shutoff. Branch valve is behind the lift panel. The service passage is locked under police control, Meg said. Then get the key. Police have it. Use the master. There is no authorized master on site. Marlowe laughed without humor. A building is flooding and you people are discussing authorization. Yes. Your insurer will deny secondary damage if you refuse emergency mitigation. The insurer requires licensed, documented mitigation within released areas. I am licensed. Your work on this property is under criminal and civil hold. A hold does not stop water. It stops you entering the evidence route. Marlowe pointed at the stain. 5 more minutes and the plaster crosses the desk circuit. 10 and the ceiling comes down. You will lose the lobby, the permit, and whatever buyer is still foolish enough to call. The threat used Meg's exact pressure points: evidence, occupancy, money, choice. It was too well arranged to be only a repair assessment. The whole building curb valve is the proportional response, she said. Proportional is a lawyer's word for letting damage spread. Documented is a contractor's word when the contractor expects to be paid. Rena said, no work order, no authorization, no access. You don't even work here. My temporary contract remains active until 5. Your prior one ended when the estate revoked it in writing. Marlowe looked at Meg. You let a hotel clerk revoke the man keeping your building upright. She documented my decision. I made it. Move. Meg did not. She remained 12 feet away with the desk between them. Drew can isolate the whole building from outside. And depressurize the boiler, kill the kitchen feed, and leave your fire system dry. The branch valve is 20 feet away. The fire system is on a separate supply, Drew said. Marlowe turned. You have been here 2 weeks and think a corrected pipe map changes where copper runs? I traced it. You trace what people let you see. The sentence landed closer to threat than instruction. Rena opened the front door and fixed the magnetic stop so it remained wide. A clear exit, visible road, no private confrontation. Marlowe noticed. Close that. You're pulling cold air onto wet plaster. It is 62 degrees, Rena said. Wind changes. So do contractors. Drew moved toward the kitchen exit with the curb key. Marlowe stepped sideways, not directly blocking them, but narrowing the route. Meg said, Drew stays in public view until you move away from that door. You called me to fix this. No one called you. Your line did. There is no monitor. You were already driving here before the leak became visible. Marlowe's expression settled. The performance of urgency remained. The expectation of belief did not. Old pipe fails, he said. That is what old pipe does. This section passed pressure yesterday. Then yesterday isn't today. The inevitability again. A leak as fate. Sabotage as age. Access as necessity. Meg looked at the ceiling stain. Its center sat directly below Room 7's closed riser chase. That morning, police had released the east edge for visual inspection. Marlowe knew the release schedule from the permit notice sent to prior contractors. You loosened the fitting upstairs, she said. Rena did not react. Drew held still. Marlowe gave a small, contemptuous smile. You think every broken thing is a clue now. No, I think unreported repair arrivals are clues. I have answered this place for 18 months. I don't need a receptionist to call before I know what it does. You needed a reason to reach the manual. His eyes moved once toward the records cabinet. Now empty except for police evidence seals. Manuals don't stop leaks. Then why look at the cabinet? Because you turned a working building into labeled boxes. Meg heard the contempt beneath it. Records removed the privilege of being the only person who knew where systems ran. Rena's diagrams, Drew's corrections, the inspector's scopes, and Dorian's photographs had made Marlowe's private expertise transferable. The building can survive other people understanding it, she said. Other people understand pages. I understand what happens when pages are wrong. Then you should appreciate the controller memory. The reference struck. Marlowe had supplied Celeste's false requested time because he needed paper to defeat the electronic record. Now the paper no longer carried more authority than the system itself. You want the in, so you need me to be a villain. Otherwise you inherited exactly what I told you. Wet wood, bad pipe, and rooms nobody will pay to save. Some of that is true, Meg said. The roof leaked. Sylvia deferred work. The west timber had old damage before the new cuts. None of that moved a saw by itself. Marlowe's face altered at the refusal to give him either total blame or total absolution. She owed me $86,000 when she died. Submit the invoices. I did. You submitted round amounts, no permit numbers, duplicate material lines, and emergency hours with no call records. Because Sylvia called from the house phone and paid when guests paid her. Then valid work will be separated from invalid work. Separated. He made the word ugly. That's how you people erase a life. Billable, unbillable. Approved, unapproved. Old cut, new cut. Those distinctions are the only reason your legitimate work is not being called sabotage too. For a second, he had no answer. Hearthline will pay. The buyer's name caught him. Who? A new offer. They do not need your report. They'll tear the West Wing down. Possibly. Then what exactly are you protecting? Meg thought of Conrad's repaired cuff. The right to choose without someone manufacturing the condition. Marlowe looked toward the service door. Choice ended when Pritchard decided old cuts deserved a second report. He knew about the duplicate. Meg kept her voice level. Dorian's report was incomplete. Copies don't make it true. She had not said copies. Rena met Meg's gaze and touched 2 fingers to the grab sheet. Observed. What copies? Meg asked. Marlowe's jaw shifted. Engineers back up everything. That's how they bill twice. Where would he back it up? Ask your chief. He has been taking the in apart for paper. You took the pencil case. The sentence escaped before Meg could decide whether it was strategically useful. Armand had told her not to reveal what the card contained, not to bait a confession. She stopped there. Marlowe picked up the canvas tool bag. I came to stop water. If you want to talk about break-ins, call a lawyer. The water can be stopped outside, not before it ruins the desk. The desk is furniture. Your aunt built this place around it, and you built this emergency around the service door. For the first time, anger displaced his certainty completely. Sylvia called me every time this building failed, he said. Middle of the night, Christmas, my daughter's birthday. I kept it standing while she paid when she felt like it. Then she dies, you arrive with a clipboard, and Pritchard calls my work fraud because he sees fresh wood. The grievance was real enough to carry the false conclusion Marlowe wanted. Dorian did not call all your work fraud, Meg said. He identified 4 fresh cuts and a conflict you hid. 4 cuts canceled 18 months. 1 report cancels 20 years. Celeste walks away with lawyers, and I become the local idiot holding the saw. Celeste is in custody. For paperwork. For the crimes her evidence supports. And mine supports whatever story keeps Northmark executives out of a Vermont courtroom. He was not entirely wrong about power. Celeste had corporate counsel, layered companies, and distance. Marlowe had a truck with his name on it, and tools registered to his business. Unequal exposure did not make his acts someone else's. That is why the acts have to stay separate, Meg said. Marlowe stared at her, and she knew he heard more than a philosophy. He heard the collapse of the protection Celeste's obvious guilt had given him. Dorian photographed saw cuts through your own supports, Meg said. He photographed your tools. Marlowe's eyes moved to her face. She had revealed more than instructed, not the card. Enough for him to know police had recovered images. Outside, no siren approached. Armand's team understood quiet response. Rena angled the presence sheet toward the porch camera. 3 fingers, then 2 toward the kitchen. Drew moving to exterior shutoff. Meg behind desk. Marlowe inside. The hand signal came from Joel's drill, designed for responders who could see, but not safely call. Drew eased 1 step toward the kitchen whenever Marlowe looked at Meg. The curb key remained visible, deliberately non-threatening. No one reached for a tool that could be mistaken for a weapon. Drew shifted the curb key to their left hand. Marlowe, step away from the kitchen door. You don't order me. Cass does. The permit does. The property owner does. You think a form made you a plumber? No, work did. Forms prove which work. Marlowe kicked the red case aside. It struck the lobby sub-panel cupboard. The cupboard door opened. He reached inside and pulled the main lobby disconnect before anyone could cross the distance safely. Power vanished. Emergency lights came on above the exits. The magnetic fire door holds released with 3 heavy clicks. Rena moved through the open front door onto the porch, phone and presence sheet in hand. Drew backed toward the kitchen exit with the curb key. Meg remained behind the desk as the fire doors began to swing closed between the lobby and service routes. Marlowe grabbed his canvas tool bag and moved toward the back stair. Chapter 22. The emergency lights did not illuminate the inn so much as assign it edges. Green bars appeared above the front and kitchen exits. A low amber strip lit the stair. The rest of the lobby became shadow, wet slate, and the pale rectangle of the fire safety board. 3 doors swung on released magnetic holds. The lobby to kitchen fire door closed first. The service passage door followed. The backstair barrier moved slowly because its closer had been adjusted that morning and not yet tested under a full power loss. The renovation board showed what each closure meant. Lobby to kitchen separated the public room from the utility route. Service passage closure blocked the straight path to the old lift and evidence cabinet. Backstair closure divided the upper west access from the front stair. None was a prison door. Each compartment retained an exterior egress on the service side and a manual firefighter override. The police evidence lock prevented entry toward the lobby, while allowing exit toward the service drive. Joel had made them label the arrows after Meg called the system self-explanatory. In the emergency light, the arrows were the clearest things in the building. Marlowe reached it before it latched. Meg pressed the red close all control beneath the desk. She checked the indicator row rather than trusting the sound. Kitchen, closed. Service, closed. Backstair moving, then closed. West smoke door, already secured under investigation hold. No fault light. All 3 public side barriers show closed, she told Rena. Rena repeated it to dispatch. Marlowe has service exterior egress. He is not trapped. Public front exit remains open. The words protected more than police tactics. They recorded that Meg had used a safety system for distance, not improvised confinement. The backstair door completed its swing. Its police access lock engaged with a heavy metal strike, separating Marlowe from the public lobby while leaving the service side exterior egress available. Through the wired glass panel, Meg saw his shoulder hit the door. Open it, he said. No, the front door remained open behind Meg. Rena stood on the porch in clear view, phone connected to dispatch. Meg could step backward out of the building without crossing Marlowe's path. She did not advance toward the glass. Marlowe is inside the backstair compartment, Rena told dispatch. Fire doors closed. Meg has front exit. Drew is moving to exterior curb valve. No guests. The water continued to strike the desk, slower now, because the interior electrical circuits were dead, but the supply remained pressurized. Drew appeared through the kitchen window, holding the curb key in both hands. They crossed the side yard toward the street valve, rather than using the service drive. Rena kept them in sight and updated dispatch. Marlowe pulled the fire door handle again. The access lock held. You cannot lock an exit, he said. Your exit is the service exterior door, Meg replied. Police are entering there. His face moved closer to the wired glass. You called them before I arrived. Yes. Then this was a trap. You announced yourself. I announced a repair. No one requested one. The exterior curb valve gave a distant metal squeal. Drew turned the key. The stream from the ceiling weakened, then separated into drops. Water isolated, Rena said into the phone. Time 2:03. The ordinary success mattered more than winning the argument. Damage had stopped without opening the service route. Drew stayed outside the curb valve box and attached a red "Do Not Open" active incident tag. They did not return through the kitchen. Instead, they moved along the public sidewalk toward Rena, keeping the inn between themselves and the service drive. All civilians at front, Rena reported when Drew reached the gate. Meg at threshold.
Exit behind her. Meg stepped fully onto the porch. She had wanted to remain close enough to protect the desk from water, and the manual route from Marlowe. Neither required her body inside. The desk could get wet. The fire door could perform its own job. Standing outside did not end her usefulness. It made the distance honest. Marlowe looked upward, hearing the change. You shut the whole building. Drew did. Boiler loses pressure, you crack the heat exchanger. Drew knows the isolation sequence. Drew knows diagrams. And where the pipe actually runs. He struck the glass once with the heel of his hand. Not hard enough to break it, hard enough to make Meg's body demand distance. She took 2 steps backward toward the porch. Rena extended one hand without entering. Exit is clear. Meg nodded. The plan did not require her to stay. Armand had told her not to delay Marlowe if she could leave safely. Then Marlowe turned away from the lobby door and moved toward the service passage. If he reached the exterior door, police would meet him. If he went up the back stair, the west wing barrier blocked him. The fire doors had converted a building full of hidden routes into limited choices. Meg remained at the threshold, outside the front door but close enough for her voice to carry through the lobby. The manual is at the station, she said. Marlowe stopped. You can leave through the service door and speak to Armand. About what? The work, the payment, Dorian. You already wrote your answer on the board. The board separated the acts. Marlowe looked at the pale board through the lobby darkness. The headings remained visible beneath the emergency strip. Sabotage, killing, movement, page, log, intrusion. You think columns change who caused what, he said. They change who can hide inside someone else's crime. Celeste wrote the checks. For the sabotage. She set the price. She wanted the report. She sent Pritchard here twice. And she was not in the service passage at 5:48. Marlowe's silence confirmed no act. It confirmed that he understood the time. You were, Meg said. Dorian's photograph places you there. A reflection places a jacket there. Your tool case, your keycord, your voice. His camera made every surface look like evidence. That was his job. He turned back toward the wired glass. Celeste paid for a condition report. She paid your company $12,500 for structural condition acceleration. Her accountants wrote that. Your invoice used the same project code, because that is how they paid it. And the work? Existing condition access. Removing finish so the committee could see the framing. The finish was already removed. You cut load-bearing sections. Sections scheduled for demolition. There was no demolition permit. The logic folded time to excuse itself. Future demolition made prior damage harmless. An expected sale made the permit unnecessary. The outcome he wanted authorized the act that forced it. You did not accelerate a condition, Meg said. You accelerated my decision by taking away alternatives. You had no alternatives. That is what nobody here understands. Did you cut the joists? Marlowe laughed. You think this is where I confess because the lights are dramatic? No. Good. Old wood was coming out. Whether a saw touched it Tuesday or a demolition crew touched it next year, the building ends in the same dumpster. Then you had no reason to be afraid of what Dorian found. The laugh stopped. Outside, tires moved slowly on wet pavement. No siren. Rena heard them too and kept her expression unchanged. Marlowe said, Pritchard made degrees into crimes. Fresh, old, repair, sabotage. He could ruin a company with the date on a splinter. The date mattered because you were paid to create the damage. I was paid to make the building match what every person with eyes already knew. That it was worth less. That it was finished. Dorian disagreed. Dorian had never kept a furnace alive at 2 a.m. with a guest threatening a refund upstairs. He had never waited 6 months for Sylvia to pay materials. He arrived for 1 day and decided the difference between a cut and a crack mattered more than everyone depending on the next job. It mattered to the people sleeping above the joist. No one was sleeping there. Because the wing was closed, you were being paid to stabilize it. Marlowe hit the wired glass again, not as hard this time. Stabilize a corpse. That's what she asked. Prop it, patch it, keep the sign lit. The inn was dead before Northmark called. Then you had no reason to be afraid of what Dorian found. The repeated sentence reached deeper the second time. If the building was already worthless, 4 new cuts could not ruin Marlowe. If his work was legitimate, Dorian's photographs could not threaten 20 years. Marlowe needed both claims and could not make them coexist. He did not understand what exposure does in a town like this, Marlowe said. 1 report and nobody hires me.
Not the marina, not the camps, not the association. People don't wait for court. They stop calling. There was the motive without the act. Fear of livelihood loss, spoken in his own language, still short of confession. He used the word with conviction, as if declaring a thing dead made every later act happen to an object, rather than a place people still used. Meg looked at the desk, wet but standing. The 6-room keys were secured off-site. Rena's contract waited unsigned. The fire doors had closed because Drew and the inspector repaired their controls. A building could be unfinished, damaged, and alive enough to make the next decision possible. "You do not get to decide that alone," she said. "Sylvia did. Every time she called me instead of the town. Every time she paid cash and asked me to keep a permit out of it. I was useful until useful became evidence. Some of your work kept the inn standing." The acknowledgement startled him, and some of it endangered the people inside, Meg continued. "Both statements survive. Not after court. Court picks one. Then records need to be better than one story." Marlowe picked up the canvas tool bag. He moved toward the back stair door and crouched at its lower hinge. "He has tools out," Meg told Rena. Rena relayed it. "No visible weapon, working at door hardware." Meg stepped farther onto the porch. The wired glass showed only Marlowe's back and the movement of his arm. "Do not open that door," she called. "Fire doors fail when frames settle." This one was inspected today. By people reading my old measurements. Metal scraped. He inserted something beneath the hinge leaf. From the far service drive came Armand's voice, amplified but calm. "Marlowe Fitch, police. Put down the tool and step away from the door." Marlowe froze. The service exterior door stood 20 feet behind him. Red and blue light moved across its small window without entering the lobby. "You have a warrant?" he called. "Yes. Put down the tool. Keep your hands visible." "For bad carpentry?" "For the homicide of Dorian Pritchard and associated offenses." The full word reached the lobby without triumph. Marlowe looked through the fire door glass at Meg. He was going to destroy everything over wood that would be replaced. He was going to tell the owner what was done. Same outcome. The county engineer's words. The entire case inside 2 small sentences. Marlowe's hand tightened around the object near the hinge. Armand said, "Set it down now." For 1 second, Meg imagined Marlowe forcing the door, entering the lobby, making her proximity into bravery. She stepped backward instead, placing the porch column between herself and the entrance. Marlowe dropped the tool. It struck the tile with a flat metallic sound. He turned toward the service door with empty hands raised. Armand and 2 officers entered in protective gear, moved him away from the tool bag, and secured his wrists. No one struck him. No one needed Meg to make the arrest possible. An officer photographed the dropped tool before collecting it. It was a flat pry bar, not the utility knife. Another officer cleared Marlowe's canvas bag, adjustable wrenches, flashlight, compact drill, spare access control magnets, and a capped bottle of chlorinated cleaner. The cleaner did not prove what had been used on the coupling. It gave the lab something specific to compare. Armand checked the service exterior route, confirmed no officer or civilian had been injured, and ordered the lobby treated as both a new water damage scene and part of the arrest record. The fire doors remained closed until every compartment was cleared. Armand read the arrest warning, while another officer cleared the back stair. Marlowe asked for an attorney before the warning ended. The interview stopped. Meg remained outside until Armand released the lobby. "You followed the plan," he said when he reached the porch. "I told him about the photographs. You told him less than he told you. That is not approval. It is an observation." Rena closed the presence sheet with all 3 civilians accounted for. Drew left the curd valve shut and tagged it with the time. The leak had stopped. The ceiling remained intact. Only after the arrest vehicle left did Meg notice her hands shaking. She pressed neither against the wet desk nor into a task. She stood on the porch and let the reaction finish, while Rena remained beside her. "I did not go after him," Meg said. "No. I stayed too long at the door. You moved outside when the route was clear. I revealed photographs and did not reveal the card." The review was not comfort or praise. It was a factual account, the same form of care they had given evidence all month. Drew joined them after handing the curb key to an officer. "Whole building pressure is down. Boiler isolated correctly. Fire supply remains active." 3 people had each performed one bounded job. No one had needed to become everything. Under the truck warrant, officers searched Marlowe's locked toolbox in the drive. Armand did not invite Meg closer. He later showed her the evidence receipt because the items related to her property. The search followed compartments in order: cab photographed and sealed, open bed, locked crossbox, red plumbing case, then document envelope. Officers recorded the white fiber on the knife before removing it. The key and pencil case were recovered from a smaller tray beneath spare lock cylinders. Marlowe had carried the objects he claimed not to possess into the emergency he claimed not to create. One Braun utility knife carried a 7/8-inch blade. Its handle held blue chalk dust, and a white reinforced fiber caught beneath the screw plate. A sealed document envelope contained printed Juniper Ridge payment records, Celeste's instructions about the West Wing condition, and a handwritten note. DP has owner copy, handle before Thursday review. The note did not say kill. It did not need to become a confession it was not. Beside the papers lay a brass master key tagged BA, and Sylvia's missing pencil case. Marlowe had taken both. The truck also held a printed screenshot of the service elevator manual's inventory card. The file header showed it had been exported from a photograph, Rena sent to the permit team before Marlowe's contractor access was revoked. He had known which container to steal because ordinary project circulation exposed the label. That failure would require a new access rule. It did not make Rena responsible for the intrusion. Systems improved by naming the gap, not by assigning retroactive omniscience to the person who built the first version. The fire doors stood closed between the wet lobby and the service route. For once, the building had kept the right person from moving through it. Chapter 23. Morning returned the lobby to ordinary damage. Fans pushed damp air toward the open front door. White towels, not guest linen, each one marked mitigation stock, formed a barrier around the desk. Cass had opened the ceiling under permit at dawn and found a compression fitting loosened 3 full turns. No split pipe, no failed solder. Tool marks crossed the nut in fresh, parallel lines. Marlowe had manufactured the leak. Meg stood beneath the exposed copper, while the town inspector photographed Cass's repair tag. "Lobby circuit stays off until the electrician tests it," the inspector said. "Ceiling remains open until moisture readings stabilize. Plaster patch requires a separate inspection because of the historic medallion. Fire doors passed their unscheduled performance test. Backstair closer needs adjustment because it closed 4 seconds slower than design." Nothing escaped a list merely because the list had helped catch a killer. Cass's report identified the fitting as one installed during Marlowe's winter work. Its threads were undamaged. Fresh wrench marks matched the size carried in his red case. The line had not failed. It had been opened enough for pressure to do the rest. The desk absorbed water along its back panel. Rena removed drawers under the conservator's phone instructions and stood them on edge with numbered tags. The brass bell dried separately on an unbleached cloth. Its single accidental ring appeared on the incident log because ordinary objects did not become symbolic exemptions from documentation. "Repairable?" Meg asked about the desk. The conservator studied video. "Likely. Do not apply heat. Air movement, slow drying, check joints in 48 hours. Repairable no longer sounded like a promise. It sounded like a scope with conditions. Drew and Cass flushed the isolated branch after police sampled the fitting. The curd valve stayed tagged until water quality and boiler pressure passed. Rena arranged bottled drinking water for workers and recorded the expense as mitigation, not hospitality. By 7:30, the lobby looked less like the site of an arrest and more like a building undergoing competent inconvenience. Armand arrived at 8 with coffee and no bakery bag. Joel was teaching, which kept the legal briefing from softening into a social breakfast. They sat in the dining room with Rena, Drew, Cass, and the evidence board turned face down. Armand made clear that charges remained subject to review. Laboratory results were not all final, and none of them should repeat protected details. Marlowe was arraigned this morning on an initial homicide charge: evidence tampering, burglary, criminal mischief, and obstruction, he said. Additional fraud and conspiracy counts are under review. Drew wrapped both hands around a coffee cup. He asked for a lawyer. No custodial statement was taken after that request. "So what proves the homicide?" Meg asked. "No single item." Armand gave them the chain in order. Dorian's voice recording placed him alive in the service passage at 5:42, and captured Marlowe's language during a confrontation about fresh cuts and a second client. The recovered backup photograph placed Marlowe beside the lift at 5:39 with his tool case and a building-sized key on his belt. Dr. Menon's final medical findings placed the fatal head injury within the recorded confrontation window and excluded the boathouse ladder as its source. The injury dimensions were consistent with the flat-edged collar of the brass coupling, though no object shape could identify one item alone. The coupling's cleaned exterior had retained microscopic material inside a recessed edge. County found trace paint and fiber consistent with the service passage wall and Dorian's shell. The finding required final laboratory language, but it supported removal and use inside the inn before the coupling was scrubbed and returned. County tool analysis linked the saw classes in his case to the recent structural kerfs. The serial-numbered tools recovered from his shop carried old pine residue consistent with the joists and blue chalk in protected seams. The chalk was common, but its location and timing supported the photographs. The upper brass coupling carried fresh chlorinated cleaner in disturbed threads. Marlowe's truck and shop held the same commercial product batch, purchased on his account the week before Dorian died. Laboratory comparison could not make the cleaner unique. The purchase, possession, coupling contact photograph, and next morning replacement receipt formed the useful pattern. Cart fibers matched the service passage insulation and Dorian's coat. Sand and wheel behavior supported the downhill route. The roommate towel carried coat fibers and cart rim transfer. Its broad seal cut was consistent with Marlowe's recovered utility knife. Reinforced white fibers beneath the knife plate were being compared to the tape. The controller record placed power restoration at 7:18 after the body movement window. Drew's phone showed Marlowe requested it. Celeste admitted writing the false 6:15 time based on Marlowe's claim. His extracted message to her, recovered overnight, read, "Put request time. Lower light was on when he left. Keep it simple." "It was not on," Drew said. "Correct." The West Wing intrusion connected Marlowe to Bernadette's missing master, Sylvia's pencil case, the opened manual, and shop camera outage. His phone route contradicted his claim that he cut the plywood after hearing dispatch. The precisely sized board had been cut at 8:31, 45 minutes before the alarm. Finally, the manufactured leak placed him back at the inn, seeking the service route after he knew the manual search had failed. His references to copies and Dorian's photographs showed knowledge before Meg confirmed what police recovered. The loosened fitting and unrequested arrival were documented independently. "Pattern and convergence," Meg said. "Yes." Armand looked at her. "Your building knowledge identified the pattern. The warrants and examinations established the convergence." It was credit with a boundary. Meg accepted both. "Will you call me a civilian when reporters ask?" "I will call you the property owner who preserved evidence and assisted with building system identification." Long for a headline. That is one advantage. "What about the thing he dropped at the fire door?" Drew asked. "Pry bar only. No evidentiary claim beyond the attempted access during arrest response." His broad knife came from the truck toolbox. "Fits the inn's pre-renovation master system." Tool marks and wear are being compared. Bernadette's description of the ceramic pear tag matches the recovered BA tag, including a chip she documented in an old photograph. Armand refused to let the dramatic items become stronger than the technical ones. The arrest ended immediate danger. It did not erase the work required to prove what happened before it. Rena asked about Celeste. Her initial charges cover evidence tampering, obstruction, conspiracy to commit commercial fraud, and offenses related to the structural sabotage. The state alleges she authorized the payment, concealed the dual engagement, removed the conflict page, altered the breaker record, and made materially false statements. "Not homicide," Meg said. "Not on current evidence. We found no agreement to harm Dorian or assist in moving him." Marlowe's message after 6:30 told her Dorian had fallen below and instructed her to correct the log. Her response focused on the report page and Northmark exposure. "It is evidence of obstruction and consciousness of the commercial scheme. It is not proof she planned his death." Northmark had suspended Celeste and retained outside counsel. The company publicly blamed unauthorized local conduct while privately preserving the project records it had failed to produce voluntarily. State investigators were examining whether higher executives knew what condition acceleration meant. So Celeste may not be the last commercial charge, Rena said. Correct. She is the person currently supported by evidence. Corporate distance is not innocence, and suspicion is not a substitute for records. Celeste would face serious consequences for serious acts. Refusing to add murder did not make the charges lenient. It made them accurate. Inez, Rena asked, State Grant Office referral is active. The association entered a restitution agreement and outside administration. Criminal review continues separately. Her cooperation and the emergency purpose will be considered. Neither erases unauthorized transfer and concealment. Bernadette? Phone records and her daughter's account confirm her location during the intrusion. The recovered key supports that Marlowe took it after Sylvia's funeral, though we cannot yet prove the exact moment. Her letters are released from the homicide hold today. Meg's estate attorney had arranged for Bernadette's counsel to receive them at 10. Bernadette refused to enter the inn while reporters remained near the gate. Leonard carried the document box to her car with a signed chain of custody receipt. The blue ledger was released separately to probate counsel. Its entries supported some unpaid expenses, contradicted others, and showed Sylvia had repaid Bernadette irregularly in cash. The wage claim would require reconstruction, not a moral verdict about which niece had loved Sylvia correctly. She sent Meg a message afterward. Letters returned. Wage claim continues. The key was mine to surrender, not his to steal. Both are true. Meg answered. Agreed on both. Estate review continues. No reconciliation. No fresh injury either. At 11, the town removed the temporary homicide scene restriction from the lobby and most of the service passage. The hidden manual, west wing, coupling hooks, and selected surfaces remained subject to evidence preservation. Access became possible through written scopes rather than total prohibition. By 1, Ashworth House was arranged for its rescheduled occupancy hearing. The board chose the inn instead of town hall, so members could compare documents to conditions. Public attendance was limited to the lobby and front porch. Stell took minutes at a small table. Laure sat behind her with no coffee urn. Inez did not attend. Bernadette's chair remained empty. The county engineer presented first. Historic deterioration existed in the west wing. 4 recent cuts worsened it. Temporary shoring remained stable. The west wing could be isolated indefinitely while permanent design proceeded. The town inspector presented the 6-room path. East stair lighting complete. Smoke and carbon monoxide detection tested. Door closers installed. Room 3 sink repaired. Room 5 pest treatment documented. Room 6 furniture restored to safe layout. Shaft openings camera inspected and fire stopped. The lobby leak required drying and electrical clearance, but did not compromise the east guest wing. The board chair asked Meg to describe unresolved risks. She stood beside the renovation board without covering any red column. Rooms 7 through 11 remain closed. The west structure is shored, not repaired. The boathouse is closed. Its winch is unsafe, and its electrical service remains restricted. The lobby ceiling is open after an intentionally loosened fitting. The old service elevator shaft is disabled and sealed, not removed. The inn has no approved overnight staffing plan until a second trained emergency contact is hired. The chair said, You understand each statement may become a condition of approval. Yes. You could characterize some as future capital work rather than immediate occupancy hazards. I could. They would remain hazards with better nouns. The chair asked for financing. Meg presented the limited opening budget. Estate cash covered required work, 4 weeks of payroll, insurance deposit, utilities, and a contingency equal to 15% of the repair scope. It did not cover permanent West Wing reconstruction. That project would require guest revenue, financing, grants, or a later decision not to restore all 5 rooms. What if revenue misses forecast? Tom asked. Room rates are based on 6-room comparable properties, not 11-room aspiration. The plan assumes 40% occupancy for the first quarter and no event income. If cash falls below the reserve threshold, we stop discretionary work before missing payroll or safety maintenance. Who monitors it? I do, with monthly review by the estate accountant. If Rena accepts the operations role, she receives the same numbers. Rena said, No operational responsibility without financial visibility. The chair added that sentence to the conditions. Tom Beaudry, the retired electrician on the board, looked down to hide a smile. The arrest does not repair the building, Meg said. It does explain intentional damage and releases some routes for work. We are not asking the board to treat criminal charges as a certificate of occupancy. Rena testified to the operations plan. Her 6-month offer remained under review, so she described herself as temporary evidence support and inventory lead. She presented dual key control, vendor authorization, incident logs, guest presence tracking, emergency contacts, and authority to remove any room from service. Who can override a safety closure? The owner in writing for operational issues. A qualified professional for building or life safety conditions. No verbal override. And if the owner dislikes that? Rena glanced at Meg. The owner wrote the clause. Drew described the utility corrections and their own controller error. They did not minimize energizing the boathouse on Marlowe's request. I accepted prior practice instead of current authorization, they said. The new system requires a named owner request and second confirmation for closed areas. Owning the error gave the board more reason to trust the correction. Public comment remained divided. One neighbor feared crime tourism. Lore asked for preservation review before any West Wing demolition. A former guest offered to prepay a week and was told the inn could accept no money before approval. The Lake Association requested continued access to the emergency shoreline stair and received a separate meeting date. The reporter asked whether Meg intended to market the murder. The board chair ruled the question outside occupancy scope. Meg answered anyway. No murder-themed rooms, tours, packages, or souvenirs. Dorian died while doing professional work here. The inn will not turn that into entertainment. Lore said, put that in the operating plan. Rena already had. After an hour, the board recessed for inspection. Meg, Rena, the inspector, and the engineer walked rooms 1 through 6. Each door carried a condition sheet. No decorative staging concealed unfinished work. Room 5 smelled of soap instead of mice. Room 6 held 2 assembled bedsteads and no lamps borrowed from unsafe rooms. Room 4's lock had been changed, though Rena had not yet accepted housing. At the West Wing barrier, the engineer checked every shoring monitor and the new alarm. All readings held. The board returned to the lobby and voted to approve a conditional limited occupancy path, not immediate opening. Final authorization required each listed inspection. An insurance binder naming 6 rooms only. Signed staffing coverage. Posted West Wing and boathouse restrictions, and a successful fire drill witnessed by the town. The conditions were numerous enough that applause would have been inappropriate. Lore applauded once anyway, then stopped when Stell looked at her. She returned to the lobby and faced Meg. 6 rooms, she said. Not 11, I know. Working kitchen after final hood test. Lobby after electrical clearance and plaster stabilization. East stair and fire separation meet the limited plan. You need final staff training, insurance binder, and 3 inspections. How long? 4 weeks if nothing new fails. The inn chose that moment to knock once inside the radiator. The engineer looked toward it. Nothing material. Then she asked the question Meg had spent the month treating as an outcome other people would determine. Do you want the 6 rooms? Chapter 24. 4 weeks later, Meg stood outside her own front door and waited to be allowed into the inn. The door was no longer swollen. It opened smoothly beneath a fresh coat of deep green paint. A brass plate beside it displayed the 6-room occupancy permit, emergency contact number, and a smaller notice stating that the West Wing, boathouse, and dock remained closed. Rena blocked the threshold with a clipboard. Room keys, she said. Drew, balanced on a ladder beside the porch, held the new sign away from the shingles, while Piers checked the bracket from below. We did keys yesterday, Meg said. We tested locks yesterday. This is opening inventory. Rena called each number. Meg produced the matching brass-tagged key from the locked transport box. Room 1, round tag. Room 2, oval. Room 3, new rectangular tag because the old plastic one had been discarded. Rooms 4 through 6, each numbered, photographed, and recorded. 2 sealed master keys remained in the desk safe. Rena wore the operations master on a retractable black cord. Meg's owner master sat in his zippered pocket, rather than loose with her house keys. 6 guest keys, 2 masters, 1 emergency key in the firebox, Rena said. Count agrees. She signed the opening line and stepped aside. Meg entered. The lobby ceiling had been repaired without disguising the old medallion's hairline cracks. The desk's back panel showed a slight tide mark beneath its polish. The conservator had offered to tone it out. Meg declined. Repair did not require pretending water had never arrived. The brass bell stood on its unbleached cloth for one more hour of drying, though every moisture reading said it was dry. Rena preferred a redundant hour to a symbolic exception. The last month had contained 3 inspections, 2 failed hood tests, 1 successful fire drill, 8 revised scopes, and a week in which every available door closer seemed to object to working on the same day. Week 1 belonged to drying and evidence releases. The lobby plaster remained open while moisture readings fell. Police returned the desk, bell, non-evidentiary service records, and Dorian's black inspection case to his executor, rather than the estate. Meg signed each release without treating returned property as closure. Week 2 belonged to hidden conditions. The shaft camera found 2 missing fire stops and 1 abandoned speaking tube opening no current plan showed. The inspector added all 3 to the scope. Rena moved the target date, instead of asking contractors to compress cure times. Meg informed the 3 provisional reservations that opening was not yet confirmed and accepted no deposit. Week 3 belonged to systems people noticed only when they failed. Door closers, alarms, hood pressure, hot water recovery, room key audit, food storage temperatures. Joel ran the fire drill with 2 volunteers playing guests who ignored instructions. Both volunteers succeeded so convincingly that the second drill added a script for people who wanted to retrieve luggage.
Week 4 belonged to proof: insurance binder, payroll account, health inspection, final electrical test, staff training, and a 12-page operating conditions packet. The board chair signed limited occupancy at 4:17 Thursday afternoon. Rena scanned the permit, stored the original in the fire-safe cabinet, and refused to hang it until the opening day key count passed. No single week transformed the inn. Each removed one honest reason it could not open. Rooms 1 through 6 had passed. Room 1 kept its faded blue wallpaper and received a radiator valve that closed. Room 2 gained a smoke detector, door closer, and a mattress that did not list toward the lake. Room 3's cracked sink had been replaced with a salvaged basin from East Storage. Room 4 had a new lock and a housing license attached to Rena's contract. Room 5 no longer smelled of mice. Room 6 held 2 restored bedsteads, reading lamps with inspected cords, and no furniture borrowed from restricted rooms. The kitchen hood finally passed after Drew found a reversed pressure sensor installed years earlier. The stove, refrigerator, dishwasher, and 1 prep sink were licensed for breakfast service. The dining room could seat 12, though the opening plan allowed no public events and no guest count above the 6-room limit. The west door carried a solid barrier, alarm, and inspection window. Shoring monitors reported daily. No work had begun on permanent restoration. The boathouse remained closed behind police-released but town-restricted doors. Piers had replaced no dock and fixed no winch. He had installed temporary hazard rails, posted the closure, and submitted separate repair and replacement estimates for later review. Meg had declined Heathline's offer at 11:40 Monday morning, 20 minutes before its deadline. She had not promised never to sell. She had chosen a 6-month operating trial with quarterly financial gates, a repair reserve, and the right to stop if the numbers required it. Before declining, she and Rena spent Sunday evening trying to make the 6-room forecast fail. They reduced occupancy, raised heating costs, doubled the west shoring inspection allowance, and assumed no event revenue. The plan still covered payroll and routine operations if the inn averaged 4 occupied rooms on weekends and 2 on weekdays during the summer quarter. It did not fund full West Wing restoration. Meg wrote that sentence at the top of the forecast. The first capital gate came after 90 days. If operating cash fell below reserve, non-essential design work stopped. If payroll coverage fell below 8 weeks, they reviewed rates and costs before accepting new repair obligations. If the inn could not support safe operation after 6 months, sale remained available without calling the trial a failure. "What makes the trial worth doing?" Leonard had asked on the final buyer call. "It produces information no buyer's report can give me," Meg said. "Whether 6 honest rooms can support the next decision." She declined Heathline in writing, thanked them for transparent terms, and preserved the correspondence. The acquisitions officer replied that the company might reconsider later. Choosing the inn for 6 months did not require pretending every bridge behind her had burned. Leonard called that a bounded decision.
Rena called it the first business sentence Meg had spoken without hiding a rescue plan inside it. At 8:30, they sat in the dining room with 2 copies of the final employment agreement. The inn now operated through Second Chapter Hospitality LLC, wholly owned by the estate pending probate distribution. Payroll, insurance, vendor accounts, and guest deposits no longer moved through Meg's personal card or Sylvia's old checking account. The company formation had forced questions the murder could not answer. Who owned guest data? Who signed vendor scopes? What happened if probate changed the property's title? Leonard built the operating entity around a lease from the estate, terminable only with employee and guest obligations addressed. Bernadette's claim attached to estate proceeds, not Rena's payroll account. Meg opened a business checking account with dual visibility and approval thresholds. She funded the repair reserve from estate cash under Leonard's written authority. Every transfer carried a purpose. Sylvia's old account remained frozen for reconciliation. At first, the structure read as impersonal. Then Meg understood what it protected. Rena's wages would not depend on a family argument. Guest deposits would not pay an heir's legal bill. Bernadette's valid claim would not disappear inside breakfast revenue. Separation made reciprocity possible. Rena's contract named her renovation and guest operations lead for 6 months. It set salary, overtime, on-call stipend, room for housing, 30-day housing transition, decision rights, safety closure authority, financial visibility, severance after sale, and a review date before renewal. Meg signed first. Rena read the last page again. The words have not changed since last night, Meg said. Then they should survive one more reading. She signed and dated beneath Meg's name. Effective 9 a.m., Rena said. My temporary contract ends at 8:59. Should we observe a moment of administrative silence? Pay me through it. Meg handed her the operations master. Rena clipped it to the black cord and tested the retraction twice. The staff structure remained small. 2 part-time housekeepers had signed defined schedules and training agreements. A weekend desk clerk began the following Friday. Drew worked through Cass's plumbing company and held a separate maintenance coordination scope, not a vague promise of future employment. Piers handled dock restrictions under a written inspection contract. Meg covered 2 desk shifts and breakfast planning without declaring herself available every hour. The housekeepers received paid training on chemical labels, linen sequence, room release authority, and the right to stop work when a seal or condition looked wrong. No one was told to treat the inn like family. The staff handbook used team only when describing an actual group task, and never as a reason to stay late. Rena scheduled herself off property every Tuesday afternoon. Meg scheduled Wednesday mornings away from the desk, though she had not yet decided where to go. The blank time looked indulgent on the schedule, until Joel pointed out that emergency plans needed leaders who occasionally slept and had lives elsewhere. The weekend clerk's offer included no promise that hours would expand with the West Wing. Future rooms did not create current unpaid availability. Joel's presence board hung beside the staff entrance. Everyone had completed the witnessed fire drill. The grab sheet showed staff, guests, vendors, and day visitors without displaying private details to the lobby. Opening meeting, Rena said. 3 rooms occupied, not 6. The first reservation block remained intentionally small. Breakfast at 8, quiet hours at 10. No boathouse access, no West Wing tours, no exceptions for people who remembered Sylvia or claimed historical interest. Guests received lake weather instructions and a map that ended at the public shoreline stair. Media? Rena asked. No interviews on property. No discussion of Dorian, Marlowe, Celeste, or evidence. Refer public record questions to the appropriate agency. Murder tourism? Refund and decline the stay if that is the stated purpose. Owner override? None. Rena checked the box. The criminal cases continued. Marlowe remained held pending further proceedings. Celeste's attorneys negotiated access to Northmark records, while state investigators widened the commercial fraud review. The Lake Astor Association approved a public restitution schedule for Inez's diverted funds and elected an interim treasurer. None of those processes had reached a tidy conclusion. Bernadette's wage claim also remained. At 9:15, a courier delivered a cream envelope addressed to Meg. Inside was a copy of Bernadette's latest probate filing and a note on yellow paper. 6 rooms do not settle Sylvia's promises. The claim continues. I hope the boilers behave anyway. Beneath it, she had written the number of a heating technician unaffiliated with Marlowe. Meg filed the probate notice and pinned the technician's number to the vendor review board rather than calling it family help. She wrote Bernadette one reply. Claim received. Boiler referral received separately. Thank you. Mixed Legacies required more folders than Saints did. At 10, Drew and Piers carried the sign up the ladder. The old Ashworth House lettering had been cleaned and stored in the historical archive, not discarded. The new sign fit the existing iron bracket. Its background matched the front door. Cream letters curved across the center. The second chapter in. A small brass bell mark sat beneath the name. The historical room had approved the sign dimensions because the iron bracket fell within a local preservation overlay. The town approved the business name after confirming no registered Vermont lodging used it. The insurer approved it after adding the new entity as operator. Even naming required 3 systems and 1 fee. Laura accepted the old Ashworth House letters into the historical archive on the condition that the display labels say the name had changed, not vanished. Meg agreed. The old name remained part of the property's record without remaining the instruction over its door. Rena stood on the walk with a level. Left side up 1/8. Piers looked at Drew. She can see 8s from there? She can see when people hope she won't check. Drew adjusted the bracket. Lake Astor House sounded like a real estate brochure. Sylvia's Inn turned inheritance into sainthood. Ashworth House preserved a family name without saying what the place would become. Second chapter did not claim a fresh start. Fresh implied untouched. The inn had damage, records, debts, repaired seams, and rooms still closed. Meg did too. The name made continuation sound chosen. It also belonged to more than Meg. Rena had returned to Dunnett after reporting wage theft cost her a hotel career. Drew was rebuilding professional judgment after mistaking loyalty for instruction. Bernadette's claim demanded a new relationship to family work, whether or not she ever forgave Meg. The inn could hold those continuations without turning them into inspirational copy for the website.
Rena had already rejected "Come Begin Again" as a homepage line. People are allowed to arrive for birding, she said. They do not need a personal transformation package. The website now promised clean rooms, breakfast, lake weather, honest closure notices, and no dock access. Level, Rena said.
Drew tightened the final bolt. No one made a speech. The first guests arrived at 3 in a dented silver hatchback, carrying binoculars, rain hats, and enough field guides to alter the vehicle's suspension. Anita Bell and her older sister Marcy had booked room 3 for a spring migration weekend. They had stayed at Ashworth House once, 12 years earlier. Sylvia put us in room 9, Anita said at the desk. She said the radiator there responded to threats. Room 9 is closed, Meg replied. Room 3 has a new valve and responds to ordinary controls. Less character, Marcy said. More reliable heat. We will adapt. Rena completed identification, emergency contact, and payment without turning recognition into a waiver. Meg showed them the east stair, breakfast room, weather map, and closed route notices. Neither guest asked to see the boathouse. Marcy did ask whether the maple outside room 3 still attracted yellow-bellied sapsuckers. I don't know, Meg said. Tell me if it does. The invitation was hospitality rather than performance. Room 1's guest arrived at 4, a retired librarian attending a historical room workshop. Room 5 remained empty by design after its reservation canceled. Rena did not discount it to fill the night. At 6, Joel brought a covered dish for the staff and friends' opening meal. Armand followed with bread and a clear statement that he was off duty unless the building required otherwise. The building has been informed, Meg said. Joel inspected the presence board before setting down the dish. You moved the visitor column. It was too close to the vendor magnets, Rena said. Good. I was prepared to make this social evening unpleasant. You teach middle school orchestra. We assumed that capacity. Cass and Drew came after their final service call. Piers declined dinner because a marina lift had failed, then texted that he had documented the emergency before touching it. Laura brought rolls and no archival requests. The 2 new housekeepers attended on paid time because team meal did not make required opening review voluntary. They ate in the restored half of the dining room. 6 tables remained stacked beyond a rope while plaster cured. The meal did not celebrate solving a murder. It marked a limited opening, completed work, and the people whose names appeared beside it.
Armand raised his glass only long enough to say, 6 safe rooms. 3 occupied, Rena corrected. I am celebrating the permit, not tonight's revenue. Joel touched his glass to Armand's. Armand leaned his shoulder briefly against Joel's. 22 years of marriage carried in the ease of the gesture. Meg raised her own glass across the table, grateful for a friendship that required no other name.
After dinner, Meg found Sylvia's 30-day letter in the owner file. She had first read it on the lobby floor with her suitcase beside her. 30 days in the house before you sell. Not because the house deserves saving. Buildings do not deserve. People decide what work they can carry. 30 days gives you time to learn the weight before someone tells you it is light or impossible. The letter did not instruct Meg to keep the inn. It did not predict Dorian, Marlowe, Rena, 6 rooms, or a brass bell sign. Sylvia had not arranged a destiny. She had created delay, because delay was the only gift she trusted Meg to use. Meg understood the 30 days differently now. They were not a test of loyalty. They were space in which the decision could become hers. She returned the letter to its sleeve. At 8, Anita and Marcy came down to ask about breakfast. The retired librarian wanted an extra blanket. Rena handled the blanket request, while Meg confirmed coffee time and explained that the west porch was not an alternate birding exit. The kitchen dishwasher completed its cycle without leaking. The lobby radiator knocked twice and settled. No alarm sounded. Meg's suitcase remained in room 2, unpacked except for the emergency toiletry bag she had learned to keep ready. She had not moved into a symbolic owner's suite. Room 2 was safe, practical, and close to the front stair. Larger decisions could wait until they acquired facts. Rita finished the 8:30 key check and placed the operations master in the safe. All occupied keys accounted for, she said. No incidents. 1 extra blanket. 2 breakfast questions. 1 attempt to use the west porch. Successful soft opening. Insufficient sample size. Promising preliminary result. Rena allowed that. The front desk bell rang once. Not an alarm, not an old family signal. A guest asking for help. Meg stood inside the desk, ledger open, the new inn name visible through the front window. She did not look toward the door for her suitcase. You have been listening to No Vacancy for Trouble, a second chapter in Mystery by Wynn Valentine. Meg Ashworth has opened 6 safe rooms at the second chapter inn. That summer is bringing new guests, old rivalries, and a mystery waiting behind the door of Room 11. Continue the series with The Guest in Room 11, Book 2 of the Second Chapter in Mysteries by Wynn Valentine.